Okay, guys, we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome to the September 26th full board work session. First, I want to introduce Danny Williams. Congratulations to Danny, new board member. Welcome, and glad to have you.
Thank you.
With that, turn it over to Greg for our public comment.
All right, this time, Commissioner, we have public comment.
We do. We have several people signed up in advance. We really appreciate them letting us know it's in the agenda. And I guess we can start out with someone you've heard from before, it's Coach Walls.
Thank you. Good morning. For those who don't know me, my name is Scott Walls. I'm the head bass fishing coach at North Oldham High School and an active member of the Coaches Association for Bass Fishing. It certainly is an exciting time to be a high school angler in the state of Kentucky. The sport is in a great spot with a chance to grow even more. This morning, I wanted to speak briefly about an informal policy prohibiting the state championship from being held on the same body of water that holds a regional tournament. 4 years ago, when the coaches around the state started socializing the idea of a lake rotation, coaches, specifically those in Region 1, would refer to this policy. They would cite fairness as the reason for the policy. We scoured the rules for bass fishing in the KHSAA handbook and could never find any reference to this policy. Fast forward to our latest survey of coaches that we held this spring, and the overwhelming response from the coaches throughout the state, including coaches from Region 1, is that this policy, while it may have been beneficial when the sport started, is no longer necessary. The coaches recognize that one tournament 2 weeks prior to the state championship does not provide a competitive advantage. What does provide a competitive advantage is your proximity to a lake and your knowledge of that lake. By establishing a rotation, while it's not a perfectly level playing field, it will at least provide student anglers from other parts of the state with the same advantage that the schools in Western Kentucky have had since the sport was started in 2013. We have discussed this with MLF and they agree. Coaches throughout the state feel so strongly that we're fine with Region 1 holding their regional tournament on Kentucky Lake if they would like to. Again, the proximity is the advantage, not a single regional tournament. Why is it important that I mention this policy this morning? Region 2, my region, consistently averages over 150 boats for our regional tournament. Pre-pandemic, we had over 200 boats, and we're hoping to get back to that point. Besides Kentucky Lake, there's no other lake that can handle 200 boats besides Lake Cumberland, not to mention the surrounding infrastructure to accommodate them. With this policy in place, it all but ensures that the state championship would never leave Kentucky Lake. In closing, while it's been communicated that this decision to rotate will be a business decision, I hope for the student anglers of Kentucky that more than dollars and cents are looked at. I hope that what a rotation would provide for our student anglers would also carry some weight. As I mentioned when I spoke in May, the Coaches Association is active and we're willing to help any way we can, regardless of the decision regarding the rotation. Thank you.
All right, next up, looks like we have Coach William Smith, also on fishing.
Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for allowing me to speak today. My wife will tell you that sometimes if I speak from my hip, I don't all. But the one thing I want to say before I give my little speech here is I'm an ex-football player, played college football. I went to the pro tour, fished on the pro tour for many years. As you can tell, I'm retired, no hair, all gray. The one thing I can tell you is when it comes to competitive bass fishing, being local makes it easier. Okay. The way I look at it, if we keep having it at Kentucky Lake, I'm all in for the one that comes from Kentucky rotate, because those two infrastructures can hold a big tournament. But with that being said, one thing is I'm gonna read from here because my wife don't want to speak from my head. You know, I grew up in Eastern Kentucky. I've lived in Somerset, I've lived at Lake Barkley, and now I live in Northern Kentucky. I got to put my glasses. Sorry about that. My statements here are not based on what is best for one of these regions or the other. They are based on what is best for all our kids and the sport as a whole. I'd like to speed on the top of the rotating state tournament between the two lakes. It's my opinion that the state championship should rotate between Kentucky and Lake Cumberland. There is no sport that the home court advantage is more evident than bass fishing. I know y'all understand a basketball court is this size, a football court is this size, or a football field is this size. Yes, the fans do affect home court advantage, but that's the only thing that affects it because the playing field is the same. When it comes to bass fishing, it's not the same. Just to give you an example, Lake Cumberland has 1,285 miles of shoreline and covers 65,000 acres. At summer pool, it can be 197 feet deep. Kentucky Lake has a total of 2,300 miles of shoreline and is 160,000 plus acres, including the portion in Tennessee. Its average depth, deepest depth is 70 feet. The conditions on each of these lakes is vastly different. Contours, habitat, structure are different on both lakes, which means fishing strategies are different for both. Kentucky Lake is a TVA higher generating lake, which means water is moving most of the time, and the fish they respond to the current. Lake Cumberland, on the other hand, is more of a flood control lake than the fish are not dependent on current. The methods of success on each of these fisheries are very unique in their own way. My years as fishing as a pro in the pro circuit have taught me that fishing TVA lakes is vastly different than fishing flood control reservoirs. Most of the experience our Kentucky high school anglers have is on flood control reservoirs. If you have any questions about this, y'all can ask me and I'll elaborate. With that being said, our kids in Eastern Kentucky, which is where I grew up, are at a major disadvantage. They do not and cannot dedicate the time and expense to repeated travel to Western Kentucky to learn and become accomplished on TVA lakes. We have to understand that these kids only have 4 years. Most of the time when you're freshman and sophomore, you're learning. Normally juniors and seniors make the state tournament. Push that home. The Western Kentucky team has won 8 of the last 10 state championships as they were held on Kentucky Lake. It is 350 plus miles from Paintsville to Kentucky Dam Village. For most of the families, the expenses for these trips come out of pocket. There are no buses for the teams. I think we all know how expensive gas, food, and lodging has become. I realize in some instances, the schools are able to cover a portion of the expenses, but this isn't always the case. It isn't fair for our Eastern Kentucky anglers to bear the burden of these extra expenses year after year. But the distance to Lake Cumberland is close to the same from Eastern and Western Kentucky. Even though there are other avenues such as KBN and TBF for our kids to fish, most kids dream of winning a state championship for their school. I've heard that part of the reason we're holding the tournament on Kentucky Lake is the fact that there are no other KHSAA championships in Western Kentucky. I'm not proposing to move it totally from Kentucky Lake. I'm saying let's rotate it out of fairness. Ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Coach. Next up, we have Coach Dean Walker.
I think his was in writing regarding the topic. Should have Coach David Christopher.
All right, next up, we'll have Mr. David Christopher.
Thank you all for letting me be here. I'm the principal of Bull County High School and the former bass fishing coach for 9 years. I started the team, and this has been a long time coming to come to this day in this meeting, and I just appreciate y'all letting us be here. My name is David Christopher, the principal of Bull County High School and former bass fishing coach for 9 years. First, I want to say thank you for the opportunity that Major League Fishing and KHSAA has given students across Kentucky. It's been an unbelievable ride, and it's still going strong. When we started our team in 2014, my district thought there was no way we could do it. Now, 10 years later, we've all proven what a huge impact that fishing has made on students and families. The reason I'm here today is to discuss fairness and equity in KHSAA bass fishing. At every level of fishing, from championships to openings, all tournaments are rotated for fairness. Fishing is like no other sport. These lakes are not football fields, basketball courts, nor soccer fields, which I've coached 2 of those sports out of 3 that I just read. All lakes are different. From watercolor to structure, fish adapt to their lake. The more you can practice on a local lake, the better you are, and the success rate for winning goes up. A student angler from McCracken County 2 years ago, when he acknowledged practicing every day for 2 weeks prior to the state tournament, and how his partner and captain put them on some fish, was just a prime example of how fairness has not been there. For all student anglers who fish in Kentucky to have a fair and equitable opportunity to win a KHSAA championship, the KHSAA host lake must be rotated. The data that was shared with all board and patrol members was emailed from Scott Walls earlier in the year. And recent months showed that championships have been dominated by Region 1 teams for years. All I'm asking for is a rotation of hosting the tournament for fairness for all students. If it were actually up to me, I would ask that every region get to host that tournament. I personally don't want to fish Cave Run Lake, but that's the only fair option for the kids who live in Eastern Kentucky. However, most coaches want to see this hosted on Lake Cumberland and Kentucky Lake because they can hold so many boats and it's a huge area. We ask as coaches and schools for you to consider the fairness issue and rotation of lakes when you look at hosting the KHSAA state championship. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Christopher. We also have some other guests that have signed up. Mr. Anthony Ray, would you like to speak?
No, I'm good.
Thank
All right, give you that opportunity, and Travis LaFew.
Here to support.
There we go.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Any other public comment?
There we go.
Questions?
It is an agenda topic a little bit later, so. talk about it. Good, thank you all.
Thank you.
And now, to advise the board, the closed session could be a little lengthy. So be comfortable. And I've been told that the president has interpreted it does not count against the president-elect's time for the work session. But his 2-day record's probably not in jeopardy anyways.
All right, this time, take a motion to go into closed session.
Motion. Or,
You got me, and second.
yeah, Nolan Russell.
You got that, Judge. All those in favor, show of hands. All right. We're gonna move on to item 4. We're gonna move on to item 4, which includes operations and information for the board. Okay.
We start out with operation reports. We've got a few meetings. I can tell you that our staff's been to more meetings than listed here, but you do have some reports that are in there. Is there anything that staff wants to expound upon with Pipe Soccer Committee or KPOS? Okay. And we'll cover the items that I need to cover in section 3 later on. So that would be it for that 4.11. It's okay. 412 is the status of legislative discussions. I mentioned to you, we regularly are meeting with members of the General Assembly. As a matter of fact, one of the key people to the compromise on House Bill 563, we're meeting with the second, which is a big meeting because he's kind of been the one representative that was a little objection. He kind of objected to any more leniency. I think he's not impacted by the change, and so I think his opinions are changing. So we'll meet with him and let you know. But there's some things in here just to let you know what we're talking about. One of the things that we are continue to try to address, and I wanted you all to see this and understand the chronology. In 2017, there was a bill passed that created charter schools in Kentucky. It did not fund them, but it created an allowance for them. And we were asked for an official comment when the House committee sub was passed, and it just represented another type of school. No different than we've got independent schools, we've got private schools, we've got, Christian school. It was just another type of school. During the legislative process, if you go to about page 12, you see the concerning piece of House Bill 520. The Senate committee sub, the Senate changed it. And in there, put an allowance that a student enrolled at a charter school could play for the school of their residence. They did not mention they could have a choice of schools. They did not mention if it was public or private. They did not mention anything in there. We have been trying to get it taken back to where the House committee version was, which is charter school is charter school is charter school. So if they want to play and have a team and it's just them, it's just like any other member. Right now, that's hanging out there because that is the only thing in statute that lets you go to one school and play for another. And we have, that affects us in our discussions about homeschool students. That affects us, really, to be honest with you, our districts and their flexibility have harmed a little bit of our conversational material with the legislature on non-enrolled students by creating these virtual academies that they're allowing kids to play sports. So they're A1 and they're virtual. So we've already got a considerable amount of places in this state where legally students can go to one school and play for another. This is not the old example we used to use was you went half the day in the main building and half the day at the vocational school, but you were still the main building's kids. It's not that anymore. Education delivery, and again, November 5th might likely change things. We've got to watch this, but just wanted you to know that that's on the radar. We also put in there the statute. We talk about statute all the time. 156.070 is the statute that designates the state board to manage education, but then it also says they can designate somebody else to manage athletics. And then there's a married up regulation with it. We always want to keep that forefront. The other thing that I've shared with you all before is information regarding homeschool student participation. There's considerable interest in what Indiana does. I don't know that anything will be authored, don't have any way of knowing, but I can tell you there's interest in their provisions, and just so you know what some of those are. And they're listed in here. That student has to have been homeschooled for the last 3 years, so they don't just make a decision to come play sports. They got to be enrolled in a school, in a member school, for at least 1 hour. They've got to take the state assessment. And because of that linkage, in our state, they would likely be eligible for KEYS money. And the district could decide if the district would have the choice to play sports. That's how it works in Indiana. Some of that stuff's listed there. Just they're looking for us to discuss that topic with them. The admonition the last time I was up there was that if they have their staff write it, it might be as much a problem as some of the other statutes we've talked to you about. If we can give them some ideas of something that's working out there, that gets the best of both worlds, gets some seat money, get some enrollment opportunities, then they like to look at that. They realize it's an area they're not totally knowledgeable about, some of it. I can also tell you that one of the key members who sees us in 2 different committees as the chair homeschools his students, homeschools his kids. So he understands homeschooling, and he probably does it the way you'd want it to. So let's understand that topic's still out there. The other thing that I think is going to be very interesting, and you have a copy in your material of an LRC update. It's school district profiles. So I wouldn't try to read it on your phone. It's 387 pages, I think. But it is you might call it a data abstract of funding in Kentucky. And I can tell you, one of the people I met with thought it kind of interesting that we're continually asking for more legislative money, and yet we probably have about 60 new turf football fields and some other things. And they're tying those together, even though they're probably not related because they came from different funding sources. But just be ready. They're tying those together. Some of the people that are going to talk about that. We don't get involved in that. It was just shared. But I thought the report that is leading to some of that commentary, being interesting to see. Concern about a school that is an out-of-state school that runs virtual academy that has students enrolled. They're managed out of state. They do have students in state that are also enrolled in one of our independent schools. At the same time, this company has approached another independent district. And coincidentally or not, if you go toward the back of that report, they're the 2, I believe I was told, they're the 2 highest per pupil expenditure districts from the state in Western Kentucky. And it's probably not coincidence that they were picked, because if they can get the money for those kids, 97%, I believe it is what the allowance is. So I think you're going to see some funding cleanup. What we're being led to believe, and I think it's probably legitimate, is let's get November 5th over with, and then you're going to see some considerable look at what's going on with SEEK and allocation, et cetera. But not much use doing it till we find out what the public has to do, until they find out. what the public wants to do as far as out of district kids and funding of kids at non-public schools, et cetera. So, just kind of a summary. They're very cordial. The Top Shelf's doing a top shelf job of getting in the door, and they're doing what we have to do. We're making no commitments, but I did commit to share back with you. Questions on that report? All right. Sports reports from staff is the next item, 413. Starting with the fall, any of you all have anything you want to highlight?
I'll highlight on cross country. We are gonna flip the order at the request of the Kentucky Horse Park, so class 3A will go first this year.
Yeah. There's another event, and I think they're trying to manage traffic, et cetera.
So they asked for the largest to go first.
I've mentioned to you before, they've effectively doubled the cost to go out there now. And it's not an insignificant number, and done the same thing for Joe's wrestling tournament. But that facility does give us some options that a regular high school facility doesn't for both events. Field hockey, anything, Darren? And Joe, you're primary, sorry. Good. Okay. The only thing you'll notice in the football report, we've had a lot of inquiries about guardian caps. Guardian caps are not illegal by the playing rules. Guardian caps, according to the manufacturers of the football helmets, void the warranty of the football helmet if you use them. So districts are put in a very tough position. They've got mom and dad thinking they can protect their kid. They, whether the validity is there or not. You've also got a copy of some studies that have been done. There's a recent study out of Delaware that talked about the efficacy of, is it really slowing down? Are the pads really slowing down? And their conclusion was there's no evidence of that. But that's not the marketing claims being made by some of these helmet add-ons. So you got to kind of watch it. And our districts are in a really tough position because mom and dad might have had a kid that they want to get extra protection for, and they're pushing the coach to allow them to wear it. And yet you go out there and you put it out there knowing that if they do and they get hurt, at least the helmet company's not in the defendant box with you because they've told you the warranty voided. You're on your own. So it's a real tough situation. See a lot of them in practice, still don't see a lot of them in games. But from a rule standpoint, basically if they come off, they've got to be sent out because their equipment, it's like breaking a chin strap. They got to go fix it, sit out and play and come back. Don't know where that's going to lead. But right now there's just the scientific evidence all over the board as far as its actual effect. One of the docs more than one of the docs on the KMA Sports Medicine Committee that works with us closely, and they're great folks, made one point that I don't think some people think about. They call it the gladiator mentality. Does that extra layer of padding make a kid do something he wouldn't otherwise do? Does he feel like he's totally protected, so I'm going to do something real stupid? Don't know. But their concern is with that. But it's kind of, right now, it's district choice working with parents. We've had 4 or 5 parents that have made serious inquiries. It's not a major problem, but there's been a lot of questions about guardian caps. How can we get to policies about drones? Joe, just anything on your golf report other than they played regions starting this week where they could?
The weather finally showed up and caused havoc, so we had a lot of delays, but Region 5 girls is going to finish tomorrow. That's the last one we have, and with the pairings out tomorrow for the first round.
Plus, I think luckily the way you've got it, there's slots anyway, so it's just once you get that one, they go right in. Good. Yeah, they've got that sport under control. Unlike, Ed, you got anything about soccer?
Just thank you to Mr. Kelly. Looks like we'll be at Paul Lawrence Dunbar for the state championship. Mr. Kelly's got me connected with his principal. We had a good conversation. We're going to adjust the game times a little bit to accommodate the traffic going around that school and make things work. We had hoped to go to Mr. Mills' former school, but concrete's still torn up quite a bit around there. But maybe someday. But that's the biggest thing I don't know. Unless you want to cover how bad I'm doing on DQs.
169 to 66. Every regional meeting, I made the count. I did.
Now, having said that, I will tell you.
Having said that, 72 of those, 72 of the 169 involved the first 4 provisions of the rule that required the kid to only sit out one game about what you all did this summer, which is probably a victory. They're still ejected, but your penalty variance will probably help.
We have gotten a very positive response to that. So I think your all's change in that regard has been well received and appreciated. And I think it's been positive and good change.
The interesting thing that we've looked at with this, and you've got the report in your board stuff on disqualification and official stuff, but the maybe it's the number of teams that actually have a JV and freshman team, but it's not even the lion's share. 153 out of 169 are varsity soccer ejections. And it's almost, the percentage is 25% or better in football, but it's non-varsity. Kids just don't know how to act. But it is just kind of unusual that the majority, I mean, it's so disproportionate varsity to JV in some sports. So, but we're tracking that so we can see what are other things we can do, educational things we can do, et cetera. Volleyball, anything, Bush?
Our district sites finalized and the officials this year working the state final round and come from the even region. Open information.
Jackson, anything on your lacrosse? We'll cover the other item on the teams later on, but in general, feedback?
No, just that we reminded schools during the annual meeting and regional meetings to update arbiter, which they've done, and you all got that list of schools in front of you. We can go ahead and start with getting together alignment.
Yeah, and we will cover that a little bit more when we get down to that topic, but
Soccer. I've never had to worry about it before, but on the soccer, should a team go to state, is that still your blind draw 1 through 8? I'm sorry, 1 through 4.
Yeah,
section,
so
1 through
the
4.
first and second rounds, if you guys remember baseball and softball, how we used to do it, we have basically pods where they'll rotate on that, and that's going to determine where they go. Then for the second round, we'll have a blind draw within that pod. And then when we do our semifinals and finals, that'll be a blind draw. So that's all coming up next week.
It's interesting because in reality, in the first round, you've eliminated 2 out of the 4 in the pod. So blind draw for the second round shouldn't be difficult, but the blind draw for the semifinals, definitely difficult. Boys and girls across the same basic data.
Yes.
Because in the middle of that's boys volleyball. Anything Butch on boys volleyball? I know we're going to talk about anything other than your other talk. Okay, good. Cheer dance.
Declarations are due Monday, so I'll send another reminder out within the week, but.
All right. 414. Oh, sorry.
Hey, Joey,
Yeah.
I know, of course, it's funny, but not funny, that my lacrosse coach decided to send a message up here that I wasn't aware about. But will that have time, will there be a point today where that's at
Yes.
least thrown out?
Yes.
Not right now. Okay.
Correct. We do have that as a specific item because we want to get some feedback to tell us, start to get ready for November.
Okay.
Yeah. Nothing today will be final. 414, just a general report, not details. And Rob, you can lead off, but obviously the transition that we knew we were going to make, we said fall was going to be a challenge. It's been a challenge, but it's smoothing out. And now we've started the basketball and wrestling things coming in. But Rob, I've got a couple of things that I'll mention, but I'm gonna give you a chance to mention first and you might cover them. So just things.
Thank you. Yeah, I think several ADs in this room, so I think like Mr. Kelly said, in a year or so, everything will be smooth sailing. I think it's getting better over time, of course. And it's just, I think now that I'm getting to the point where I can sit down with these ADs one-on-one, I've got the little Zoom thing, working with Mr. Hicks, Anthony Hicks last week, maybe a couple weeks ago. It's just really helping. I think once they get in and see things, we got these 2 in-person days coming up in October. It's the week after golf. It's Tuesday, Wednesday, the week after golf. Next Wednesday is Monday. A lot of people looking forward to that. I think it kind of let me do what I did at the hype conferences with the ADs there. They have the kids there, and I was able to sit down with them, help them work out their winter basketball tournaments. The big thing I'm trying to get ahead of is the basketball tournaments around Christmas. So I've been asking the schools that if they have tournaments, maybe watch my videos. I made a couple of really good videos. I think I did the Billy Hicks one in Scott County and use that as a demo, and then another couple. And just to go ahead and try to get them loaded in and let me review them.
and make sure they got them loaded in correctly, but I think that's the big key, because we struggle with volleyball. I mean, Connor can tell you, poor Connor, he's been working on volleyball, it seems like 24 hours trying to eliminate duplicate matches and so forth. And I mean, a lot of it's because we got several hands in the pot. I'm sure Commissioner probably talked about this, but a lot of times we may have schools successfully enter a tournament, type it in correctly, but then an assigner may come in and they can't even enter tournaments, so they may just stick in an individual match, but then cause it to be duplicated. And then he's dealt with, oh, well, there's duplicate staff reports, there's duplicate scores. But I don't know, I haven't talked to Mr. Robert this week to see what our percentage of score reporting is, but I would think it's going up. I feel good about it. I went to Section 2 meeting and talked to the folks up there. I think there's a couple states that are kind of waiting to see how it goes with us. And I told them it's going to work, we're going to make it work. It's going to work, and I think I'm also hearing, like Casey Fisk up in Northern Kentucky, he was like, wow, I didn't know we could do workers, I just got more workers, do this and that. And some of them are moving away from it, Event Link and Final Points registration piece to try to get everything into one spot. So I think that's a plus. But it's really key to have somebody, Casey up north, got several ADs that are really, really strong and really passionate, I won't say passionate about it like I am, but they're into it. So I'm trying to get them to reach out, and maybe they're in the policy boards or whatever to help their peers, I don't know if any of your ADs have any input here on it, but.
It was tough on me at first, but if I can figure it out, I know a lot of other people can.
That's funny. Mr. Thompson can relate to this. I know Coach JD Strange got his Christmas tournament in. He was tickled to death. He said, "Hey, this you can teach no dog new tricks."
Yes, we can do it. Anyone can do it.
Oh, man.
Interestingly, and it's funny you say that, because if we were to trend line this, the newer ADs had greased right on down.
Yeah.
The ones that really had been entrenched in the old system had struggled. And does that not sound like the Infinite Campus transition from STI? I mean, it's just the way it is. But Rob's been 24/7 on this, and several of our staff have had to pitch in, trust me. Even our sport leads have had to help get involved. I just was looking. We've got, including last night's game, we've got 14 missing games in boys soccer out of all that have been played, and 11 in girls soccer. We've got a higher number. It's in the 80s for volleyball, but in reality, probably a majority of those are duplicates, but we've had to get our staff involved. And field hockey's only got 2, and it was 0 yesterday. So those games must have been played yesterday. One of the things, go ahead, Rob, if you want.
Well, I was just gonna say,
Because I want to hit the scoreboard.
arbiters being really proactive. They're trying to get a tool for us to find the duplicates and get rid of them. I know they're working pretty hard with Mr. Ryherd on that. So, where he's pulling it to the scoreboard, he's able to, of course, he's so sharp, well, with all the API monitoring tools, he's really sharp at giving us little tools to say, hey, these are the duplicates and maybe you need to do this or whatever. So that's really helped us out a lot. And he's working with Arbiter weekly on that.
Is
I think go ahead, no.
just a quick question, and I'm no expert on either one, but Jason, Shepherd, our AD, is really pretty good at it.
He actually made a comment. He thought it's gonna be really good.
He hated it this summer. I mean, he took his whole summer, but
People did.
yeah,
Hey, me
but
too, they know.
yeah,
I'm just-
but he does. I mean, he is a fan of it. But one question he'd had before, and I don't quite understand this completely, because he used Event Link last year, and he's not using it because it's just too much. It's too hard to do just the arbiter. But as far as we have limited facilities, so we use our high school facilities for a lot of other things, for middle school events, elementary events. I mean, there's a lot of things going on. Through Event Link, he was able to put those things in, even though they didn't report, in Event Link, it was a place that people could see other things. He's run into a lot of situations where people thought things were available when they weren't. And he was just like, I wish there was a way I could get in here. And I don't know if those are things through Arbiter that you can report to be able to allow schools to put things that are just like, that could show up on a calendar, but they do not report or affect the KHSAA, but it helps us with our facility usages, because he does not want to have to go do another whole set of calendaring for other non-athlete or non-KHSAA events.
Yeah, it's a great question. The Arbiter Live page is very similar to
event link. That may not be as pretty or whatever, but, and of course, Arbiter's got every sport from archery to zookeeper, I guess, like every sport in the nation, you know. It is a Fleming County. No, no, so.
It is in Fleming.
So, you know, I created an eligibility for band, you know, marching
There it is,
band. You can basically add and schedule any sport team you want. It doesn't have to be a KHSAA sport. So I know for JCPS, like they wanted all their, like they mandate all their marching band directors to take a sport of safety. So we made a, you know, marching band eligibility, and you just create the marching band team, add the director in there and enroll them. And so there's just so much more that you can do that we maybe need to communicate that a little bit better, you know?
Yeah, I just didn't know, like we have an elementary basketball tournament getting ready to come up. We had a lot of confusion because of the dates and it was not there, so we could.
I think there's a couple of things that you might think about, Noah. I think first of all, the non-high school, middle school age competition piece are obviously prioritized right now, or not prioritized.
Sure.
You know, but because there's other people that use the gym. But I think they're also always looking for add-on opportunities that maybe one school would use, but a lot don't, and that may be something we can share as well.
I think what's Lee County's, Danny, District 80, anyway, I think they're looking at Brightly.
Yeah.
Because I talked to him at the annual meeting. Now, Brightly's the facility management software that syncs with Arbiter. And
It's integrated with Arbiter.
Oh.
If you go to settings,
Okay.
if he goes to settings, there's where the Arbiter Live settings are and so forth, there's a Brightly link. I don't know, of course, the Arbiter sales team will say, well, 40% of those schools in the nation use Brightly, but I mean, I know they're a dime a dozen, but I'm pretty sure Lee County is looking into that.
Okay.
To do the full 40.
And there's a built-in integration. It's Bright LY.
Okay.
There's a built-in, matter of fact, sometimes when your ADs move games around, there's a message that comes up about does this impact Brightly, et cetera, because they're trying.
Okay, well, I haven't checked that out. And the last question was, and I know, I think he'd even talked to you a little bit when we had that schedule, the North Laurel game that came in. But are there adjustments in the future that you'll be able to see? Because if another team schedules the event or someone else schedules it, you can't see the official, it's harder to see some of the data.
Let me make sure everybody understands. You can always see the officials. I don't want that to even.
But yeah, it was something else.
I know what happened in that one. There was they played an out-of-state team. And the problem, one of the flaws that we have seen, and I'm on the officiating side. Rob and I have tried to keep in touch and see where the officiating side has, because I'm working with Scott a lot on where's the officiating side screwed up, the school side, and where's the school side screwed up. I'll bet you 2/3 of the schedule issues have been because it sends messages back and forth and one school doesn't accept it.
Yeah.
Because anytime anybody makes a change, they gotta accept, we can see both, and there's a lot of times he's able to fix, I know on the officiating side, I'm able to just accept for him. I know the game's changed. So.
Yeah, and Arbiter will give you a game conflict warning.
Right.
When you try to enter a Duke. The problem is schools can override it. Well, even though it says, hey, look, you know, Johnson Central has this game scheduled at their gym at this time. Do you really, really want to enter this match or contest? And right now it allows them to say, oh, sure, yeah, go ahead and do it. So that causes some of the issues as well. Instead of, to me, that would mean if I was the coach of the AD that was trying to do that, it would, you know, it should flag them and say, well, maybe I need to get a hold of the coach or AD at Johnson Central and see, you know, what's going on. So,
yeah, I think if both schools put in something, it'll tell you, boom.
Yeah.
Right. And it'll tell you if you got 6:30 and one's got 7, it's still going to tell you because it's a range of time for the game. So ignoring that does hurt sometimes. I think the biggest though, if I could, and staff, y'all tell me if I'm wrong, but if I could say the hardest part of this transition has been getting assigners who've been using Arbiter for years to change the way they do things. Right now, in the sport that I'm dealing with more, which is on the football side, when David's assigning secretary gets a call that the game's been changed, that he doesn't have enough officials, but he's going to get E-Town to do it. E-Town's guy will go in and add a new game instead of just having David change who's coming. And that fixes it for everybody. The messaging is getting out. It's been a little bit of a battle. There are some things we can do technology wise. For example, we can block the assigners from from editing things like the game time or especially entering games. And I think you might look for that to be turned on. Because at some point, the schools need to be in control. It's hard because if I could summarize one thing, and Rob, tell me, because you and I've had this conversation 1,000 times. Previously, arbiters' service was primarily, can we get a game in so officials can be assigned, period.
I call it I mean, the main interest then was to get warm bodies to Dunbar. It didn't really matter if the signer level was JV or varsity, if it was marked as a scrimmage or non-scrimmage or a tournament, they just wanted warm bodies there, but now it's driving the ship. But I'm convinced that the schools, I mean, even the JD's checklist, he wants to make sure those games are good. A lot of schools, especially smaller ones, the ADs are just saying, hey, coaches, for now, stay out of it.
Exactly.
And, I kind of wish in the way we put the brakes on like baseball and softball, kind of let's go by season, but now we got like, well, let's get our baseballs and softballs all loaded in and so forth. But yeah, I got my prediction. I think the arbiter app, I think in a year's time, everybody will live by that app. Intersports. I know Jeff Jokins, he was like, hey, if I'm at a game, or I'll just bring up the app and enter all my scores right there. It's real easy. They'll be doing push notifications, from the app, because everybody's, got a phone and they got both Android and, iOS, where we only had iOS. So, if you're sitting at a game and you get a little push notification on your phone, hey, you got a game going on right now, click here to enter the scores, brings up the app. I mean, that's the direction it's going in there too. The Arbiter Live piece is really good on the app, I think. It actually looks a lot better than it does on the computer screen.
And we know there's still development to go. We still don't have a front end page for the school's basic information. But we said we defer that, like what their address is and this kind of stuff that we used to have on ours. But that's not important because we know we got to get officials there. And we know that we've got to get schedules there. What we've seen a lot, and like you said, we get somebody that just inadvertently or advertently, if that's technically correct, adds a new game and doesn't get the right level. We have one this week involving the assigning secretary in this area in football for a non-varsity game. They apparently wanted to play an extended game. Instead of the regular non-varsity rate, they played the regular varsity period, which they can't do by rule, but they chose to do it. Well, the assigning secretary, to get the pay right, selected it was a varsity game. Well, all of a sudden now that goes to the scoreboard. It shows they're playing a varsity game on a Monday. So I think it's the integration that the schools are grasping quicker than the assignment. They're figuring it out, and a lot of that's because they got day-to-day support.
Yeah,
But it's been good.
Yeah, and the training days, I know some of y'all watch the webinars we've had. Zane's really sharp. He's the product lead. He's super excited. He wants to get here and hear input. He's like, good or bad, it's input.
Yep.
And Lava, who you see that's our contact on those webinars, she's kind of Ashley Lavate. And then Damon, after we talked to about registration, I sent a message to one of the higher ups there, and I was like, it may not be a bad idea to bring somebody from registration, because I'm no expert on it. So I think Kate, the one that you all were talking with when I put you on the spot at the annual meeting, you hopped on the Zoom with her. I think she's coming. She's in South Carolina, so that'd be good. And I think Casey's agreed to, because Casey's really big in the arbiter registration, Pisgah Scott. He's kind of agreed to help maybe do like a pair up with her, do it from an AD's perspective, because he's been using it since it was before arbiter registration. They bought out another company. He's been since pre-COVID. So he's a really good one to lean on if you want more information on registration, because I don't really know a lot about that piece.
And I think the other thing that getting those peers involved, you're always going to have peer. We got one in this town that if they hit the slightest snag, it's time to throw a bomb on everything. And having those guys that can talk them off a cliff has been really helpful.
Oh, yeah.
Linking those people together.
Casey. Yeah, there's a lot. Josh up at Lewis County, there's quite a few in the regions that Harper and Owensboro.
Yes, and some you wouldn't expect.
Yeah.
Are pretty damn good.
Really good ones, and they're like, hey, look, we're getting, and we talk a lot. We text the ADs in that area, and so they're helping each other out. I think that's key.
The biggest thing that we are, just to make you aware that we know we've got a quick climb up a mountain coming in the next couple of weeks, because postseason starts next week for the team sports. And this whole synchronizing with a scoreboard, which I think we'd get shot if the scoreboard there'd be bombs in the building if we ever had problems with the scoreboard. So we've got to try to make sure that data is pure. I think sometimes the pace of development's been slower than we would like, probably faster than they're used to. But I think assigners probably started putting in soccer district games a month ago. And just putting in the names and who was covered. And the risk is that with the tournament entry that Connor's doing, if we do duplicates, so we know we've got a tough couple of weeks coming for staff. So just so pray for them, hope for them, we'll get it done.
And my last recommendation is, I know Benny and Danny, you said some things yesterday about needing a list of this and a report, just send those to me, because
Yeah.
that's how we get things done, you know.
Yeah, we didn't know
It's
what you
getting
all
pretty
need.
hard right now, because I know a lot of districts are saying, hey, I need a dump of this, of all your coaches.
Yeah, we're
CPRs.
working right here's one of the problems we're working on right now. We've actually got the ability using the base arbiter and a couple of exports to create officials lists. But right now, we don't want to put official cell phone numbers in a place the public can find. But we need to put them in a place that the schools can find. So it's those kind of issues now. We're in more planning issues. Because I'm telling you that I bet you, I don't know how many regions we've gone to that people need that list for their middle school signing. Or something like, they need to know those people and because they don't use an assigner for the middle school in all areas. So, yeah, it's information, getting it out, as he'll tell you, we've talked about for 20 years, is the fact that getting it in is not the final product. You gotta be able to get it out too.
Right, and the monitoring tool for the ADs.
Yep.
You know, they had to basically crank that out, it started in March 28th, I think, and we had to get it going by July 4th, and so July 15th. And so now there's that, hey, we got something out that people can use, but now let's go back and make it better. So that's, you know, I would think that would be after the first year for sure, but that will continue to get better, more colors, more.
And we'll try to have sidebar conversation with Mr. Zuber and Mr. Williams to address one assigner who may or may not be in Chad Sports. It seems to be constantly a data cleanup
I wanted to
issue.
give you one athletic director's perspective. I think athletic directors had to get up to speed as best they could before games started. Mid-July to early August. And as those that were at the delegate assembly, ADs survived the fall. Like the fall is the hardest time of the year for athletic director. So Rob, I gotta be honest with you, this is me. I don't know how the other ADs in there feel. When you're firing updates throughout the year, I'm just trying to survive the day. I would suggest, or maybe something that you can put in the back of your head, is that November might be the favorite month of the year for athletic directors, because there's hardly any games in November. It's the only month of the entire year where there's no games. And maybe to sort of focus on ramping athletic director or new developments that Arbiter has. Because right now, I've got the basic that I know what I'm gonna do in Arbiter, and I'm not looking at anything else until I can get past the bulk of my fall seasons. And maybe in November, that's a time for me to build more skill or more knowledge of the offering. So
So do I hear you saying keep working on the features, but as far as the explanation of them?
Well, the offering of instructions and trainings, those are things that I can't even wrap my mind around trying to schedule or go to one of these things right now. But in November, I might be able to.
Yeah.
It's a good point. November is the best month.
Yeah, and I think, and then what I've heard from a lot of the athletic directors is like, if we could just get through the fall, we got volleyball, because officiating is what's kind of made it really more difficult.
Yeah, soccer, volleyball.
But in the winter, we got basketball, got wrestling, and I guess some swimming maybe, but I mean, basically, we don't have to, mess with the officials so much.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm trying to get out ahead of it. So I think we can I think a lot of, like what Mr. Luber was saying is like, get through this fall, and then we get just a little maybe lull where we can really get some more training.
You got a few weeks there after you get done with fall sports where you're having that breathing room before you start back up, ramp back up with the winter sports. If it's okay with the board, I'd like to go ahead and we can take a break and we'll have a presentation after that. We can come back to these discussions, but I think it'd be a good time to take a break. Got a couple more quick breaks, but we're gonna go ahead and get started. Our next item will be, I think we have some special guests here that want to do a presentation, maybe a dual presentation on bass fishing proposals. So ladies, come on up.
I think we got a couple seats right here in the middle, if y'all don't mind sitting next to each other. You have known each other a while. On my left, Elena Blevins is from Western Kentucky. And then you met Danielle at a previous meeting, Danielle Wilson from Lake Cumberland. And I think our purpose, we know that there has been some discussion with our office who sets the site and talked to both of you and kind of told you the little things. A lot of it, stuff you have to put in writing, but I think really we've got it's great that after this time, we actually have more than one person, more than one entity that wants an event. A lot of times that's not the case. So I don't know if you all have a thought order, but I know I did tell you in advance and the board has that note, just 2 or 3 things that might come up. Obviously, one of the things that was a concern about moving the tournament is that there's going to be a financial commitment that it's going to cost more to have it at Lake Cumberland because of the proximity to Major League Fishing staff. And we're not going to farm it out to anybody else. So that's kind of a done deal. And we'd asked, Danielle came down did a site visit last spring, and which was wise. And Laney, you've been involved forever with you all. So if you all have anything you want to say, we know there's some cost issues. We know there's some prior issues. I do want to make a clarification. There's never been a policy about not using the same site for region and state, but that was a consideration by the board the last time when we first started the term, and that came from Major League Fishing. So whether or not that's an issue is really one for you all to decide. But we do want to hear what you have to say. We're looking, as I told you all, we're looking at 4 years. So one of the questions I'd like you to answer, in addition to the financial questions, is does any of your thoughts change if one of you only got 2 years, the other one got 2 years? Or if the board made another decision, is there something about what you can do that would change because you don't get all 4 years? So that's just a question. And I doubt that there is, but I have to ask that question. So anyway.
I mean, certainly, as the representative of Kentucky Lake, I mean, I would love to advocate that the event stay on Kentucky Lake just because we've had vested interest over the last 10+ years, and with Major League Fishing being headquartered on Kentucky Lake, it's certainly cost effective and convenient for the tournament to be coordinated. I mean, if it had to rotate, we would do our best to support whatever years it's selected. Kentucky Lake is poised to have some of the best fishing years we've seen in a long time. So we kind of did talk if we would be okay with every 2 years or every other year. I think maybe an every other year rotation, if that had to be the case, might be a little bit more convenient for us just because it allowed us from a budget standpoint to maybe offset some costs on a fiscal year basis. But Kentucky Lake, it's going to be some great fishing for the next couple of years. We are hosting the Bass Pro Tour in 2025 in June. So that's, it's a national stage. It's a huge event. And so it'd be really exciting for the students to be able to compete on the same body of water as the pros come June. So I think that is something to consider. But I mean, if ultimately if KHSAA rotating is what has to be done, we want to be a support to the bass fishing industry, to the sport itself. It's a huge economic driver for us. And we're excited to see it come back full swing and very strong. So however we need to support that, we would do what we could.
And for us, of course, we want it to move. We're friends over here. We're like, no, we want it. No, for the fairness of the kids is essentially what we're here for. In any state tournament, any regional tournament, any tournament of any sport, baseball, basketball, it rotates. It's different places just for the kids. Same with fishing. Kentucky Lake's going to be a different type of fishing. Lake Cumberland's super deep. Lot bigger, more fishing area. You had concerns about the region. I'm sure that if your board decided that the region wanted to be on Lake Cumberland as it was last year, that you all could, put parameters in, as Julian said. But, again, that was something that you all would have to decide and enforce. I don't think that would be a problem just because of the mere size of Lake Cumberland. And like she said, we're here for you all and for our kids, and to be able to host it anytime, any year would be good with us. But we definitely, I think, agree that she probably doesn't as much as me, but I think it needs to rotate, just again for the fairness. But every other year we are hosting in 2026 the World Series and National Championship on Lake Cumberland. So rotating that year, because it's in June also, would be, would be great for us. Again, financial, stipulations do come up, and with something that big and this and whatever else may come our way in the future would be good for our budgets to just share it. And even if it rotated outside of Kentucky Lake or Lake Cumberland, I mean, that's something to think about also, but.
What about the issue of I think the number, you were down there. I think the number was, $4,000 to $5,000 that it's going to cost, that it does not cost it like at Western Kentucky, you all.
So I actually
Try
have
to help
talked
with
to, MLF. I've been in contact with them about the cost, just because we didn't know, and we had a number, but we wanted a secure number. And we had in our presentation, we have prepared the RFP, I guess, we would do hotels, rooms for KHSAA members that were there working as well as MLF. And I don't think they were under that impression that we had already considered hotels for them. So unlike when it is at Kentucky Lake, there's no hotels involved because of the proximity. So we have already factored in that we would have hotels for KHSAA as well as the MLF truck. And I think his number was, or her number, I talked to, was around 3,000 to 4,000 for it to move. So we are prepared for that cost.
And that's one of the reasons we wanted to be sure you have that stuff in advance.
Yeah.
So one of the issues that as we've looked at it, obviously, the corporate involvement, the ability for us to come in there with our regular, we have a third party that did not exist when we first started this championship. All the stuff is outsourced to Keel Properties. And I'm making an assumption, but asking you all would be willing to work with them to identify people in either community that they can then approach about, sales. We're not asking you to be the sales representatives, but you would help with that, because that interface is, it's been peaks and valleys at all of our events. Plus it's peaks and valleys at fishing. So I'm assuming that's not an issue.
I mean, we need to help curate a list with, potential sponsors and local businesses that might work with them. We'd be happy to.
Darren, do you have any specific questions before we throw it open to the board? That from the management side, it's really fight set and you take over.
Yeah, I don't. I just think that we've always counted on, and it wasn't extensive, but obviously some additional help from MLF and the local school there, Marshall County. So we would probably just be looking for some more help from one of the surrounding local schools in the same manner that Marshall County High School would step up and assist us and run that.
Yeah, and I think there's some logistics that people don't think about. Marshall for years has brought over bleachers so you can ADA accommodations, and I'm sure Boyle and some of the other schools would be more than willing to make sure that got done, whether they did it or not. Somebody will. Those kind of things go on. And then your volunteer bases, both of you have expressed in our earlier conversations, you're not blessed with a huge bunch of people, but you got enough run about any fishing tournament comes in down there. Would you say that's fair?
That we listed in the first meeting, that was
right.
We're prepared to still be able to do that.
Do any of you all I'll throw it open to you all for questions and thoughts, because I've got one clarification on the years, but I'll wait for that.
I've got one question, it's just logistical. What dock are you proposing? I know we saw that information before at the last, but I don't remember what it is.
It's Holcomb's Landing, so it's right past the state park, right at Wolf Creek Dam. And it has 2 ramps. The main parking lot holds about 108 boats, and the overflow holds about, we can fit easily 260 boats in both parking lots. So logistically, that won't be an issue.
And I think one of the things you also clarified is that the different tourism groups, you're primarily focused on the Russell County piece, which is fine. But I don't think people that haven't been there realize the expanse of the land down there. It covers a lot of different areas.
Yeah, so.
Not just the water.
Right, so Russell County is who I'm representing,
right.
On Lake Cumberland. So you've got Somerset, Burnside, Wayne County, Clinton, Albany. But yes, it would be out of Russell County.
Right.
Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's what I thought. I just want to be sure, because it's such an expanse. I don't think until you really start looking at it, you realize just how.
Yeah, there's several tourism offices on Lake Cumberland. But
you need to answer some of the questions. We occasionally get questions about why certain schools are in the 4th versus the 12th, and a lot of it is getting around that body of water in the wintertime, getting, with bad some roads, et cetera. Other question, Marty?
I think a question that'll come up about accommodations for, schools and families traveling in.
Yeah, we have 540 rooms. The state park already have rooms blocked. I don't know how many, but we have a block of rooms for you all for 2025. If just in case it does move, we went ahead and reserved those for 2026, whichever one it is, 2025. And around the state park, we have just hotel wise, we have Jamestown Marina, which is approximately 15 miles away. So hotel rooms near Hawkins Landing is not a problem. And then of course we have about 400 rooms for Airbnbs. And then specifically in that area, there are lots of barndominiums that have pull in barn doors on the side that you can hook your boat up to charge and all those things too. So accommodations are not a problem.
Yeah, I think we've experienced it, I know your area, but if you might reiterate, you all got an abundance around there as well.
Yeah, so our tournament goes out of Kentucky Dam Marina, Kentucky Dam Village State Resort Park. So throughout our county, we have about 1,500 rooms between resorts and Airbnbs, motels. So the state park, I actually have about 100 riders and media members on park right now. So it's used to accommodating large conference groups. It hosts labor management, so it'll hold 400 people if need be. So we certainly have the ability to accommodate. To my knowledge, it's never been an issue as far as people struggling to find accommodations. And our marina, just like hers, is we're used to hosting 200 boat tournaments out of Kentucky Dam Marina. It fits well.
So one other question, what dealing with KDV and the area, just because we were just down there, what's going on at the green across the street? Is there renovation? Is there they had some of the area closed in there in the area across from the lodge. I didn't know if they were actually expanding. I've not asked.
Well, the state park they were allocated some funding for some sort of kind of infrastructure updates that were needed. I believe the golf course was getting a new irrigation system, new playground equipment. They did do some renovations to, but a lot of it's infrastructure things that you don't necessarily see, not the pretty stuff. It may have been water lines and new roofs and that sort of thing. So, and I believe they have a meeting room called the Village Green over by the golf course that had a water leak issue, and so the construction may have been for that. And then over at the marina, there is we've been expanding sort of our sailboat program on Kentucky Lake. There's an effort to try to bring sailboating back to Kentucky Lake, and so they have partnered with our local sailing club at the marina, so they use a portion kind of off in the grass. It doesn't affect the parking lot in any capacity to store some of their equipment and sailboats and things like that. So you may have seen some fencing.
Yeah. It's just was curious if it was a total.
So it may have been that.
We asked this before when you were here. Obviously, we started our fishing tournament about 12 years ago when Wi-Fi was not a consideration. As a matter of fact, we actually had to run some things up in the trees at Kentucky Dam, and now it's a lot more structured. I assume there's no issues at all with events that have come in there because they're obviously using it. Okay, I knew at least one of our staff would be thinking.
Yeah, and if it doesn't work or you need more or stronger, I mean, that's not an issue either.
Okay,
Get that set up.
thoughts, questions? So I want you to clarify something you said earlier, because they want to hear from you, they want to ask you questions, and then they're going to do a whole lot of other things and come back to this topic for a decision. But let's just hypothetically say that there was going to be a 4-year rotation, 1-1-1-1. Are you saying it's better, you're having a major event next year and you're having a major event in 26 to have both of those events the same year, or to spread the budget out? I think there's some clarity. I want to be sure we heard.
Well, we had already put it in our budget that we would be hosting this in 2025. We just sort of penciled it in. So, and our commitment would be, 2,500, and I talked to Calvert City and they pledged to put in 2,500. I think my board could potentially go a little bit higher, but I can't speak on behalf of them without going back and having that conversation. So I had kind of already plugged it in. We just sort of kind of always, leave it in there just in case, because I never really know up until we're closer to the event if it, kind of when the payments needed to be made. And then I try to work with Sarah, and because it's sort of shifted to more of like a marketing partnership and comes out of marketing dollars, So we weren't able to connect this past year, but yeah, so it's there, but we have, currently earmarked about $100,000 in fishing tournaments, for this fiscal year, so, there's a large chunk, a lot of it's Major League Fishing events too. I mean, we're hosting another Toyota series, we've got the Bass Pro Tour. So, you know, it's kind of in there, but if we could do it every other year, it would allow me to just sort of have flexibility within those dollars.
Well, I think that's where I was not getting at what you're providing to us at all, more about both of you have intimated in conversation, your small shots.
Yes.
And is it better, is 25 a better year for one of you than it is the other? Or if you two had to sit here and pick between 25 and 26 and you knew you were going to get one, which one plays in your budget better, or does it?
25 is better for me.
I would probably have to argue 26 because I've already committed so much in 25.
That kind of was the summary of what I was hearing earlier, but I just wanted to be sure. Okay. Anything else? I don't ever speak for the board because they tell me they don't want me to, but you all don't know how good it is to have enthusiasm about one of our recently added activities that we don't have around some of our 75 and 80-year-old sports. So, and you all are part of that. What you do for the students is important. I'd always object to the word fairness because that's everybody's individual interpretation. Everybody can justify fair. But I do think that you all passionately wanting an event that's going to involve everybody from Ashland to Paducah, Newport and Williamsburg is a lot to be said for you. Especially, I'm very familiar with running a small shop. I really appreciate that. I do personally, and I think they do too.
Yeah. And just enthusiasm for the sport. I mean, about 4 or 5 years ago, the first time we had a student sign a college scholarship for bass fishing was just an aha moment to be able to say, wow, I mean, how far we've come.
Well, and I think too, and I've said this to other people, and it doesn't always go well. It's not just about who wins. That person that finishes 35th that got an opportunity to do it didn't get that opportunity 13 years ago. And so we don't want to forget that. People throw stats at you like how many people have won this. If winning is the only goal, everybody in here is a loser most of the time. So we got to keep stuff in perspective.
Absolutely.
But I think it is really good what y'all do. With that, I think unless you all have.
I'm gonna chime in on the commissioner, those of you that came and spoke with, and the passion that you have, very, very nice to see that, and your concerns and your passion, and you two appreciate that too.
And I will say to this group, and it doesn't matter whether the coach association is this big or this big or this big, this group has in their communication never been anything but forthright, tactful, and it's not like 2/3 of the stuff we get on every other activity or sport that's all caps and exclamation points. They've really messaged it as they should. For an old man's opinion, they've messaged it very well. Or stuck the course.
Appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you all very much, ladies. Thank you.
Do you need us to stick around?
I will be good. The tea leaves are pretty straightforward,
All right.
but we'll give you a call this afternoon. As soon as we get it.
Didn't mean to cut everybody off, but go back to 4.1.4. Anybody else have anything else they want to add there with that? If not, we're ready to move on.
Okay, we'll accelerate so you don't break your record.
Please.
The other items, I don't think we'll need to go into a lot of detail on. The NFHS second meeting, we just actually got back last night after spending 2.5 hours trying to get from Dry Ridge to here because of what was going on the roads. But I don't know if there's anything you all need to add from the section meeting. We just got back from Columbus, so. Okay. What is? Oh, yeah. I will say this, and I say this in all candor because I'm going to probably work with Elder on getting some stuff out with this. there's two links in the rationale. You probably ought to look at it. This came from the Section 3 meeting, and they were addressing a mental health issue. And I believe it's the Kansas City Royals coupled with a couple of people partnered on this. Not good enough project. It's about a 45-minute video. Be worth your time. I think you'll want to show it to every parent group you have, because it's about the way parents are treating students so many times, about not, it's the whole deal of getting in the car after the ball game and berating them over the 5 things they did wrong. It's really good. And it's a part of a mental health emphasis that they're doing nationally. And I got to see it in North Carolina, and I think you should look at it. It's pretty good. Officials licensing, Mr. Cope, anything you want to add?
No, and Mr. Bottoms, his wife had a medical issue, so that's why he's here.
Yeah, we won't, his wife is having some issues. They put her back in the hospital, I believe, so. And he told us, but he definitely,
There it is.
yeah, but he definitely had issues, and we told him, as we did Miss Howard, who would hate to miss this meeting, but texted me this morning about 5, which if any of you know Kara, the fact she was up at 5 tells you there was an emergency. She's with her father in the hospital. So obviously it's been a tough couple days for the old staff. And so, but there's information on here, licensing comparisons, disqualification comparisons. I tease Chad all the time, but disqualifications, we continue to look at things from the section meeting. We got a couple of ideas, and maybe people are doing some stuff. I can tell you one thing, when this board added that it would be a 3-game penalty for coaches to get ejected, and 2 games for football, it was the most rigid penalty in the country. We are soft anymore compared to what other states are having to do. So maybe the preemptive strike helped. I attached Tennessee's schedule. I think you can see there, they don't get too many coaches ejected because the principals take charge. They're not going to pay the fine, and it's pretty significant for a coach getting thrown out. And it's a school fine, not a coach's fine. So we're addressing it. Transfers and appeals, you all know that data contains student records, so only you all can see it. But status, general, Chad, on where we are in terms of numbers. Pretty high.
We're at 40. If I could get my computer to work, I could give you the exact number, but we're at about 45 appeals right now for the year. So that is certainly, if you look at it over the 5-year span, that's major increase. It's consistent with last year, maybe a little bit, still continuing to grow. And like we've had this influx of, even though bylaw 8 and that statute's been around for 2 or 3 years, we're seeing a lot more of those, and I'm having to navigate those in the appeal structure a little bit, at least temporarily, until we clarify with them that they don't have a right to appeal. It's still something you're doing. So
We got a bunch. Last year's number was about 20 something at this meeting. So
we're down to 1 hearing officer.
Yeah.
We'll know pretty soon. Judge Crittenden had to step away. Just some things going on with his life that's just not allowing him to do as much as he has been doing in the past. We're using Judge Charles Hickman, who's a former Shelby County Circuit Judge, and he's been very proactive. And I'm also talking with a couple other potential hearing officers about things in the future, and then Judge Crittenden may be back in the second semester, if you will. But everything's going good with that.
Jay, what's the rate of overturn? About the same as it always been? 70, 80, something like that?
Yeah, it's I'll be honest with you, it's stepped up. The no's have stepped up a little bit in terms of percentage, but it's not dramatically different. But it's probably 3 out of 4 were yes. It's probably 3 out of 5 now. We've seen no become a little bit more frequent.
yeah, and of that, probably 70%, when I looked at it the other day, at least, probably half of those could have been solved if the schools had submitted more information earlier.
Yeah, for sure. I'd say that half at least.
This is the second time we've talked about this, and we talked about it before. So as a longtime AD, I don't understand why they're not getting that turned in. I know we had one at a school, and I had a conversation behind closed doors Why did you not turn that in? It's ridiculous. And you had that material. Why didn't you turn it in on the front end?
You know, the interesting thing we've heard from some, and Chad, you and Darren have other experiences too, but a lot of it is they feel pressure to get it off their desk and don't dive as deep as they probably should. And I think there's a little bit of what went on this week with another case that I think there's some people that just think, well, it clearly meets it, so I don't need to submit any data because it meets it to me. And I think there's some of that.
What, can I ask Chad a question? So I hear Greg saying, what do you think's appropriate for an athletic director to do? Because when I'm in this scenario, I want to feel very comfortable that I am not leading this person to write up something that may or may not be necessarily truthful. So I try to actually keep myself at a distance from what that parent may want to initially send up. I would love to hear what Chad or even Darren or yourself think is appropriate for the receiving school to be working with the parent to provide to the KHSAA.
I think, best practice for me would include, when you have a student coming into your school, and I think the answer to your question starts all the way there. When you have a student coming into your school, you need to have an intake process that's consistent, that's the same. And if it's always done the same, that kind of helps with what you're saying. You're not guiding it this way or that. And you're going to get to the point where they have identified that they have an interest in participating in athletics, and you're going to have to fill out these forms. I think you have to sit down and have a discussion with them. Say, tell me a little bit about yourself. Tell me what's going on, why you're here, what's going on. Obviously, if it's, hey, our family was living in, Shelby County and dad's gotten a job in Jefferson County. And so we moved here, that takes you down one path. That's pretty straightforward. That's probably where a lot of them are. But if they've got another story, hey, we had this terrible circumstance and we had this situation, or we've had that. I think you as an athletic director or any athletic director that receives training on an annual basis on these, you're going to have to look at the exceptions and say, do any of the exceptions apply? If not, I think you have to listen to that story and make a decision about what your next conversation is going to be. If you truly believe this fits into that criteria under the new process where strict application is unfair, there's absolutely nothing wrong, Commissioner, you can correct me if I'm wrong, with exploring those and getting that information. What I think goes to Mr. Howard's question is, why does this continue to happen? I think some ADs are reticent to have that conversation. I think because a lot of these get into very, very personal matters. They get into divorces, they get into abuse, they get into neglect, they get into things that people probably don't want to share a lot of details. So they think if they fill out the paperwork just a little bit, maybe they'll get lucky. And then when they get told no and they realize they have to appeal, now they're going to give you all the information, or they're far more susceptible. But that's not even true in reality. I mean, you sat in these where you get into the hearing and you find there's 6 more layers to this that you didn't even know based on the information that had been filed at that point. I think the best practice for you guys is to follow that. Our best practice, and we continue to do this as a staff and back out to the regional meetings at the beginning of the year. Myself, Darren, Commissioner Tackett, the rest of the staff have to pound the table and say, the more work you do on the front end in getting into the weeds is going to most likely eliminate some of these appeals. It's not going to eliminate all of them. You're never going to be able to convince some of these parents that are so hesitant to want to air their dirty laundry or to have discussions of a private nature that are somewhat, not in the normal discussion exchange for them. And there's a natural evolution where they become more willing to do that because they realize what's on the line.
Well, Dave, I can speak directly to your question, and I think you're probably a little bit familiar with this because of conversations we've had. The hardest part for the receiving school AD is when they don't meet one of the normal exceptions, and we say, well, if there's some sort of explanation to some extenuating circumstances, write it up and give it to your AD to send in. And the AD gets it and he looks at it and he knows it's probably not completely honest. That's the hardest part. But at the same time, I think to follow up with what Mr. Collins said, you've done your due diligence in that regard. If this is what you want to submit, then we're going to submit it. And sometimes I'll call and there are some ADs that will just be, I'll be honest with you, Darren, I don't believe this is accurate. This is what the parent wanted them to submit, but I don't think this is the reality of what's happened here. That's a tough spot for athletic directors to be in, especially on the receiving school. Now, granted, we will take those statements and also follow up with the sending school. And if they don't think it's true, they won't have any problem sharing that with me. But, it's the receiving school athletic director that gets themselves in a bind sometimes. But I've never accused never had a situation where I've had to confront a receiving school athletic director about, you're supporting this narrative. I think it's more or less, that's what the family gave you to present, and then we present it.
I think as an athletic director, a good athletic director also, if faced with facts and circumstances that they know are suspect, are not in compliance with our bylaws, do not meet the criteria, and they think there's a manipulation going on, I think that athletic director should call them on it. I mean, don't forget, every year, the member school signs an application saying you're going to follow the rules. So if you know that someone's not following the rules, as uncomfortable as it might be, I don't think, there should be any hesitation on the athletic director's part to say this is not in compliance with the rules. We know that it's not, and we have to report that along with all the information that we transmit to the association. That's what it means to be a member of an association like this.
I don't know we have.
You two done? You done? I'm just trying to give you all first crack. Cause, okay, you are.
Yeah, I'm done.
I want to say something to you, David, that I can make you feel better, and I'm not really talking out of a different side of my mouth. It is not advocating for an eligibility ruling to send in what the parents write. That's okay. We have to remember we can't block their right to due process. The worst thing schools can do is say, this ain't gonna fly, I'm not sending it in. Because they really are chilling due process. There's also something, as Darren and Chad have said, there's something to be said for somebody that says, this ain't happening, but I'm gonna send it in. That doesn't obligate you one way or the other. I think the biggest thing our new member ADs don't do is understand the rule. Every student, and some people aren't gonna like this, but every student who has played somewhere else and transfers starts out ineligible. And your job is to try to come up with the facts, not your opinions, but the facts that would justify the exception that you're asking for on the form. Or secondarily, acknowledge that don't meet the 10 exception, but by the way, let me tell you what's going on. The parents have some support record, or the doctors have a support record. So it's somewhat about the membership obligation, but it's more just because you send it in doesn't mean the kid should be eligible. You're really sending it in because these are the facts you need to decide. It's bothering me as I go around the country, just because I'm old, and meet with these other states to find out we're one of about 4 that even follow up with the schools, period. Paperwork's paperwork. We're done. Make a decision. And we are extending the volume, et cetera. It's just gotten to the point where they just can't. And so that's why you're seeing relaxation of transfer restrictions, et cetera. We can't do a good job trying to defend it and trying to be the only ones fighting. My thing, and I've said this to several of the schools, with not in your case, but in some of your peers, it sometimes appears that Darren Bilberry is the only person in the state that gives a damn about the transfer rule, and is out there on the end of the diving board by himself, and he's not a swimmer. He's getting ready to get pushed in because our schools, like it or not, the parents, they're tired of the parent being in their office. Hell, I'll send that damn thing. What do you want me to say? I'll just fill it out. And that's probably not what the expectation of a member is. But so we're trying to, this is a delicate balance here. What we're seeing though, the whole thing that started this is if facts are present, take an extra day and get them. And then maybe the ruling goes a different way to start with. But again, there should be no guilt feeling because somebody's sending something in the parents wrote. You got to remember too, we're voluntarily subject ourselves to open records. So if somebody sends something in writing, It's probably part of the record. So you may want to, there's where time you may want to call and say, hey, I got a question. And the veterans do that. And sometimes the rookies don't. If you're just asking for a trend line, there's 2 or 3 things they can do there.
Yeah, I just have had deep conversations or in-depth conversations with parents. This is me. And then said, hey, put that on paper and send it to me to attach to the transfer form.
And
they
you know it's
send
not
back-
true.
And what they send back, and I don't want a guy, I'm not gonna write it for them.
Right. No, and you're doing the right thing there.
But what they send back, as soon as I see it, I'm like, well, this is what we're sending. But what I'm trying to see is at the athletic director, can we help get the upfront, the initial ruling to be correct versus the parent coming out with additional information at an appeal hearing?
And the other piece is what's the most requested exception will always be the bona fide change of residence. And if there's a point that we will drill October 17th in that advanced meeting, and every time we get, just because your DPP says they're okay to enroll does not mean they've had a bona fide change of residence in the definition the member schools adopted. Like, they might be there. They might be with Aunt Lily, but they might not be meeting the rule, just even though they're there and even though they live a block from the school. So that's the hard piece, is getting them to sort out that, and we still have, what did AD this week say that, kids that come into my school seem like they're always ineligible. I'm like, well, sorry, we could do some data research, but it's probably not true. But, so it's, those take it to the advocating stand. And you know some of those. There, I got my kid, I don't care what it is. I'm not, they prioritize the screaming parent and kid more than they do the membership obligation they sign. And so is it worth anything?
I was just trying to figure out on our end, and I don't know what it is, and you're sharing the same thing. We spend a lot of time. He spends a lot of time. You spend a lot of time. The association spends a lot of time. And I've heard this over and over again, and it's shocking me why we're not getting all that information initially and sending in. And some of these are veteran AD, and we're still getting that. So it's not a time frame. It's not a time frame. We're not up against that time frame to get this in, but it would save a lot of time and effort. We could just get this done on the front end.
I'm naively hopeful that your 3-day thing you're putting in on minimum periods will people to take a break and realize, okay, they come in on Thursday. I'm not going to get them in for that Friday night game anyway. So let's get the dates together. I don't know. That's naive.
Yeah, I think, it may feel like you're banging your head into the wall at times, but it probably feels that way for everybody up here, all around the table. But we've just got to continue to take advantage of the opportunities we have, the regional meetings, this advanced workshop we've got coming on up in October, and do that. But it doesn't shock me that we're sitting in an appeal hearing and I've got a veteran AD and they say that there's a bona fide change of residence and the dad didn't move. And it just shocks me that, that they don't know the rule, because I know that they sit in meetings and are told and verbatim and read, and we talk about it and we do it. But the reality is that sometimes people are not prepared for a given situation until they're confronted with it, right? You learn by going through that circumstance. Sometimes you just got to take them as they come.
And to Chad's point, we're also hopeful, I'm sorry, Jim, you're going to be next, but we're also hopeful that as we get into the electronic world, we're going to have some flexibility to confirm, did they really move? Did the whole family really move? Stuff that we don't have because it's paper.
I know we've talked about the feasibility of a one-time transfer. Would that come from this room, or would that have to come from a?
No, it can come from this room, and it's going to be a subject to discussion today.
But the only thing I would add, Dave, is yeah. Still my rule, man.
That's true.
That's still gonna make it my rule. I'm just gonna take it back.
Meeting's adjourned and he's got to.
I have conversations with ADs and they tell me they don't envy my job in regards to bylaw 6. But the fact of the matter is, I don't envy your job. I get the heat on the back end over the phone or via email. You guys get the heat in your face and in your office from these moms and dads. I got a high profile one. I've got to explain to the AD. I got it yesterday. I got to explain to the AD. We've been at the section 2 meeting. I've got to explain to him. I'm in the board meeting today. I got to explain to him that as far as priority, it's not going to the top of the pile. He's telling me he's got a game on Friday. And I know what it is. It's the mom and the dad in his office, like, by golly, I know we moved in and enrolled Monday. You better make sure he gets to play on Friday. And since then, I've gotten 3 emails from surrounding schools, just Joe Public blasting me, you better not make this kid eligible. But again, from where I'm sitting, that's okay. But locally, Dave, I understand the problem, but I just want to emphasize what Mr. Tackett said. Whatever that parent hands you to submit, and you submit it, I don't want you to think I'm reading this thinking, man, Dave was full of crap, because I'm not. I mean, that's what the parents asked you to send up, and that's what I'm looking at. And then after the decision is made, I've got a lot of phone calls on the front end. Darren, I'm gonna send this to you, but I think it's BS. I got a lot of phone calls on the back end. Well, I'm sorry, but that's what they wanted me to send. That's okay. If that's what they're handing you to submit to me, then take it and send it. And we're certainly not judging athletic directors based on information they've sent in that the parents have requested that they send in. Not judging athletic directors when they call up here to check on a kid because dad is breathing down the neck as to why my kid can't play this Friday. It's just, and again, when that decision is made, you guys are feeling the heat more than I am, and so.
But as we found this week, if that situation comes, those parents are on you. The option is not to say, go play anyway. That's
Right.
not the option.
Right.
So, okay. All right. That's the first time we've had that kind of branch off the transfer and appeals report. So good job, Mr. President. 419 is just informational. This is the time of year, and out we have the annual meeting. We will start the promulgation process. Mr. Collins and I will work on all the documents. We'll look at the annual meeting proposals. We are going to have some tweaks to the case situations and or some of our explanations on the NIL piece that's contained in our awards rule. We're not changing the rule, but as we've shared with you, there's going to be some reporting requirements. There's going to be some things that we're going to run as a central place and then be able to farm it out to the schools so they know we do not want to repeat of a couple of situations we had a year ago where schools were caught off guard. We don't care what the terms are. We don't care what people make. We do want to know they got an agreement that the school might need to investigate. We'll have several changes in the sports medicine policies. Drones, we've had a rule for a long time about drones, and really it was written for non-tethered drones. So basically the definitions are changing. If it's tethered, it can't ever leave the ground and it can never get to the stands. It's a camera, not a drone. And we really don't have any problems with that. But we're going to have to come back to you all with some things of what do we do if the ball hits it? And so we're going to have to play some ground rule games that we got to do. But we need to be sure it stays modern. Bylaws that were voted on, the 2 that passed 2 weeks ago, should be no issue at all. The NL reporting, I've already mentioned the 3-day timeline. And then one of the things that's the most tedious for our staff is the editing of all the forms that are put together by Reg. And one of the things that will change this year is the wording of our game contract, because we've got to try to work it out to where those that want to use the arbiter version can use an electronic version. So we got to make sure our wording synchronizes there. So that will do. To be sure it's done. Mr. Bilber, anything on Title IX reports and revisits?
No, we've got them scheduled for the 3rd and the 4th, which is the Thursday and Friday of next week. I haven't checked the numbers, but we've got plenty of schools continuing to sign up. We got a significant number. That's good. That's always good.
And those meetings that we'll talk about, just be sure, give a quick review. That's not even related to the revisits. We've got more people interested in Title IX than normal, which is good. Good, thank you.
Yes,
Joe, any comments on the update on Bowling Green?
They are in compliance with the agreed upon order in terms of the training.
Yep.
And the fine they're supposed to submit.
And they did have a recent issue that they jumped on. Somebody, there was a social media post that was inaccurate, and they've clarified that. It was sent as soon as we got it. We asked their principal to look at it. It was not what happened was no violation at all. Got a little overzealous parent maybe, but hey, trust me, they're under more scrutiny than any one of the other 288. And so they jumped on this really quick because they know they got people watching it. So at this point in the regular meeting, we would ask for a motion to approve the various reports without doing them again. 4-2, we did have 211 people register at the annual meeting, 192 registered in advance, 192 showed up. Session seemed to go well. Any comments on the annual meeting from any of you all? You know, again, this is the third year in a row, pretty pedestrian changes, but yet great attendance by the schools. That's phenomenal. Hype Student Leadership Conference, Mr. Cope, anything to add? We did have 39 schools originally sign up. What, 700-800 total people, counting sponsors?
Yeah, and then the charitable drive, we've got about 16 boxes of goods to go to the wrong house. That was the problem.
Hope none of them are bread that have an expiration date. Advanced AD workshop, I think we've talked about. Right now, we have 89 schools signed up to attend that training in October. And notoriously, that will probably get about half again, that number, that week. People will see their schedules are clear and go ahead and register, but we have had 89 sign up. Regional meetings, anything from our 3-week tour that the staff wants to add? We did have 350 member schools sign up for this year's regional meetings. We'll move around the locations in the future. We're already looking at things. Going to have probably get Coy and Randy involved in talking down in their area. Having it at one of those 2 state parks seems to please both regions versus going to extremes in either region, but we'll find out. That their attendance down there was really good. So it was appreciated. And thanks again to Scott High School on the last minute request because the other school said, we got construction, we can't hold it. So thank you. Advanced arbiter training, Rob, any additional details other than, you know, we got their staff coming in?
It's got at least 2, possibly 3 of their staff coming in. So look for that. Probably like 8 to 10 or something like that, whatever we get.
And right now we've got a little over 60 and several people that have not registered have figured out that that's at the same time that there'll be some horses running on an oval, not too far from the meeting site. So we expect that registration may pick up when they realize that it's during the meet. Title IX meetings, Darren, you've already, I think, given us, but we do have over 60 signed up for one of those 2, including one that's on a Friday. We got our audit team together. They're doing webinars, though. That's the first meeting we're talking about that's not live, or it's not in person. Hall of Fame screening, general reminder, November board meeting. Those of you that are first and third year in your term, you'll be getting a bunch of material. The deadline's November 1st. So you'll get a bunch of material about a week before the meeting where we can just we'll ask you to stay around. We'll beat up people, you know, who's this? What do you need? Then we'll turn you loose to take care of your voting. It's a 2-stage process. The first is screening. So we cut it to a certain number. And then the second will be another group that's involved in the actual selection to narrow it down to the 8 to 12. So we rotate that. The board members rotate first and third do screening and second and fourth do selection. There's 9 media members and they vote for both groups. They both times and staff is split up. So we want to keep a cross section. We had issues at one time where the committee was dominated by one type of group and they started nominating each other. And we kind of stepped back and said, that's probably not the best way to do this. Then we'll need a motion to approve those reports. Some general reports, just a lot of stuff going on around the country, but not a lot of details that you all got. You might want to pay attention to what's going on around the Tennessee Association and institutional control. There was a case where an athletic director got involved and told a school that some kids couldn't play and they played anyway, and it became a real fiasco at the game site. There's also some details in there about the Florida High School Association. They without question have the most liberal rules in the country right now. Basically, you can go but anywhere you want to and play. And now they are the first state that has authorized NIL for high school play. Basically, you can wear a high school jersey, etc. The only requirement is it has to be school decided. It's not, the state office has zero to say about it. So it is going to be a case where one school can and one school can't right next to each other. And because they have an open transfer policy, they're more than a little concerned about that. So anyway, then we give something general, and then the next group of items that we can cover, I think fairly quickly, is in item 5, as you all have asked, the kind of shot across the bow things we may not decide today, but let you know. So the first one, we've not done much more on the universal exploration and safety course. We really, our medical community really is in favor of that because they want to have the most current knowledge everybody trained in. And I think our ADs would like it, clean slate every 2 years. We're hesitating right now. We want to be sure the hardware infrastructure is able to handle that kind of load first part of May or whatever. And we've had some issues around rules clinics, et cetera. So we're wanting to be sure that is real workable before we bring it back to you for a vote. Federation has released the Rio data that's reporting injuries online. Obviously, the vast majority of concussions occur in football and primarily in practice. And that data has not changed. Pretty good sampling of concussions occurring in cheer, which is why I'm so grateful the board put in the requirements that when they start the cheerleading season, they can't just immediately start doing stuff. They've got to build to that. So that's all in there. If you ever just really, really want to dig into data, there's a lot right there. 5.2 is an item that we can finalize in November. The first one is a girls wrestling weight class issue. And just give you, Joe, if you want to give them just a little summary, the schools and the board have approved 13 weight classes, but the 13th weight class was an experimental rule.
Yeah, the 285 weight class is kind of a holdover from the boys' weight classes. And the Coaches Association always utilized it when they ran their own championship. So we went to the NFHS for experiment to have the 12+1 last year. So we were the only state that had a 285 weight class on the girls' side. Looking at the data, beginning of the year, there were only 10 girls entered in the 285 weight class. 6 of them weighed low enough that they could have competed at the next down weight class, the 235. So you're really only talking about 4 girls for that 285 weight class. Those 4 entered the girls' postseason. The other 6 did not. So when we got to the postseason for state, it was supposed to be 16-person bracket on the girls' side. For the girls' class at 285, we only had those 4 at 285, an additional 4 in the lower weight class that entered, which is more a matter of coaches playing games to earn some points. So there's a little bit of gamesmanship going on, and that's kind of been acknowledged by the Coaches Association. So I guess the point for discussion is, do we continue with the experiment or do we end it?
And I think what we wanted to do, the weight management will start, well, the season starts 15th as far as practice. We felt like by the November meeting, we'd have some data to see, are they bringing in some more, or is this something that just needs to phase out? We got you can do an experiment for 3 years. So we could, but I don't think right now, unless there's an influx, I don't think there's a lot of people thinking it's a good idea. But I want to give the weight management testing one shot at data, get it to you in November and make that determination, because the 12+1 kind of worked, but it was a bridge step. It was an intentional bridge step to get us to transition. So I don't think you need to take any final action today, but know that we'll be monitoring, and Joe's in that system every day once it opens, most of the time because of the 1.5% or that rule allowance on the 7%. So he will be able to get you some data. Boys volleyball, Mr. Colt.
It's actually under the sports report, but the listing of the schools that had in Arbor, they're going to field a team. We're up to 66 schools now. That's up from 27 when we started our regional meeting. So we'll be ready to come to you with a draft alignment at a November meeting.
And I think the plan at this point is still what we talked about before. There will be a regional tournament, and we look for a certain expansion level before we get to district. And that means people won't be in the same region they're in for other sports because we got to distribute them.
How does officiating look with that many teams? Like, would we be? I know it's spring. It's a spring sport, but is that an issue?
Should not be, because you're going to have a majority of the people that did girls volleyball
fall into that.
Right. Yeah, we know there's some overlap between softball and the boys and the girls volleyball, so it may lose a few.
They were baseball officials that kind of,
but we
would have to make a decision.
The signers seem to believe there's enough bodies, but You know, if that number suddenly goes to 120 by November, we've got to start really pushing. What we did this year is it's set up to where we eventually will register them separate genders, but everybody that registered girls was automatically registered boys. So they don't have to worry about registering. They're already at least on there. Now, whether they want to work in the spring will be their choice.
What's the thinking with 66 schools? How many regions? And
Until you put them on a map, it's speculation.
so you just hard to predict.
We're to that point, because that's why, if we'd have done it with 27, it'd been pretty easy. They're 4 regions.
I was
But-
just sitting there thinking of the scenario where field hockey, where we have the only sport with the regional runner-up advancing some way or another. Is that
Yeah.
even something that's in?
Well, I think that's where you got to have your numbers.
Mhm.
And that's why we ask the schools, and we know they're not all going to meet deadlines. We ask them by today's meeting to have indicated. So we feel better about the numbers now, and we can start exporting and adding stuff to the map and take a look, see where it lands.
You still got some schools, was contacted that their board is gonna to decide to whether or not to approve it in October meeting, so. we
Yeah.
Still have a couple.
Now, several are still having even their internal meetings, and then they've got to get the authorization for the coach's salary, where other districts did it a year ago. They're waiting to see if they got enough entry. I still think our baseball coaches don't realize they're going to lose their third string shortstop. Boys and girls lacrosse, Jackson.
So the numbers have they've stayed pretty consistent to what it was at the beginning. We've lost a couple teams on both sides. We're down to 43 for boys and 45 teams for girls. I don't know how much you want me to go into the concerns that have kind of been brought up. I know
Sometimes there's people that regularly call that have questions, and other times there's people that regularly call and have answers. So, Ms. Jackson.
one of the concerns has been officials, because of we have pockets of teams across the state, and whether we're gonna have enough officials to cover the whole area. I think Northern Kentucky has expressed that that's been an issue in the past when they were running it as leagues. The other one has been, and Mr. Zuber, you might be able to speak more on this if you talk to your coach, but wanting to look at the physicality on the boys' side. It's maybe making 2 divisions and teams start off in one and then move up as they gain participation numbers or more experienced teams. So that's been 2 of the concerns that have been brought to me as far as lacrosse on both boys and girls. I will say though, looking at the numbers and the teams, I don't think we have that many, probably less than 10 on both sides of teams that were not teams before that are just now starting to start programs. So I don't know that the experience thing would be that big of a concern.
Well, I also think that a couple of those are even attributed to schools that were combined before, but now have to be separate.
Yeah.
So it's going to stay in the basic area that it was, plus a couple of extenuating.
Biggest concerns I've got, again, it's a new one. We've had some schools in the 4th region that have had participated in that league. And they tell me the officials fees, it's ungodly, but we haven't set those.
We will have those for you in November, and would encourage all of you to go back to your Econ 101 textbooks on supply and demand. They are in the driver's seat. And that's not in any other sport do we really have that. Maybe wrestling. But they are, the supply is so low, it will affect price. It has already affected price in their negotiations with the signers. Okay.
No, I don't know if this is the time for me to speak
Anything
about what I spoke to my coach. I think he's the girls' coach. So although there are some questions about, I know me and Julian spoke about how many games realistically a boys lacrosse player should play in a single week, because it is a much more physical game than girls. The girls' side, his concern is how do we promote growth beyond this initial set of 45, because of the barrier of a school who's never had it before, and how in the world are they gonna, it's 11 kids out there at the same time, and it's got some skill that's needed to start, and how does the new school join the original 45 and just not be overwhelmed? And that's where I believe his suggestion of a second or probationary division to let schools grow their program for a year or two, and then they would move into. And I don't even know if we've been, as far as I know, there's nothing like that's ever happened in this association. So I told him, I hear you, I hear what you're saying, but I don't know if it's a realistic.
Well, there have been a couple of occasions when it happened, but those teams that you're talking about just didn't compete in postseason. And we don't mandate anybody play a postseason.
We still see that in soccer.
Still see that in soccer right now, people that have a team but don't play in the district. So there are options,
Okay.
but to have the cake and eat it too, you've not done before. And obviously, any discussion of any way of dividing groups into classes, you cannot ignore the ripple effect.
Told them that too. But it would be fair to say to the newer schools that, hey, you can begin playing, but you're not required to participate in.
They can play a full regular season, but they would stop with the postseason week. And we have what, 5 or 6 schools doing that in football now. I know we have it in soccer, but they're just not ready.
Some of those conversations I've had, is you don't have to field a varsity team either. You
Correct.
can just play JV. That's not necessary to jump right first.
Have we thought any more about the 7th and 8th graders participating in varsity?
I think the sports medicine committee is gonna, when they're meeting in October, the boys will be a definite, put it with soccer and football. The girls doesn't seem to have that physicality issue. But the boys is without question, that's same or more contact as soccer.
Do you anticipate a quarter limit similar to football,
Yeah,
or
we'll
just a
bring it to you in
restriction
November.
of like a JV game where you can't have juniors and 8th graders?
Yeah, they're gonna talk about that in October, and I think they're starting out looking at the football.
And I'm assuming we'll have something about if those 7th and 8th graders are playing, if they use them on varsity like we do in soccer, if you're having to an 8th grader play, that 10th grader gets priority to stay on. That's what it is.
Yeah,
Similar to that.
not varsity, but yeah, when the 8th and 11th are together, you got to pick, and we defer to the 11th. Or we suggest they defer to the 11th. Unless the kid's really good goalie, I guess they might. So that's just information, 524. We're 524 and 525 go together. It started in diving when Bridget was responsible for diving and also coaching at the University of Kentucky, was when the Federation had their 8 lawsuits that pretty much almost bankrupted them on pool depths and or diving well depths. And we began saying, we put in a rule that you had to participate in diving X number of times in order to enter the postseason. Well, as we have found, Sarah, unless you got some newer information, we're still standing alone in that requirement. There's a couple in track. It's a little different because there's some performance issues in diving. It's a yes or no. We've required them, and she was an expert in diving, but we've required them to have a certain number of meets during the regular season where they did dives. Frankly, we heard one thing yesterday. You want to share what we heard that actually may make more sense than what we've been doing.
Well,
we don't want to do anything today. We would do this in November.
There's one state that, and the way diving works is it's an 11 dive series. And there was one state in our section that were, or maybe 2, that required, at least you to perform an 11 dive series once in the season. Now the requirement for the postseason when they enter, the coach is already acknowledging that athlete can compete in those 11 dives. But we've been making them before. So hand and glove could go together there to where if we just required one and it was a full 11 dive series, you would at least know from the safety aspect that athlete has already performed it before the vote.
And you think about it, the comparable is in golf, we require at least the 118-hole round. So we've kind of got it to where Rodney Dangerfield can't walk up and enter if we at least require them to have done an 11 dive meet. And there's a progression, a rule book progression on those dives. And there's no discussion in the office, at least, of removing the requirement for extra education for the diving coaches and or the pole vault coaches, because we know the risk involved. But at some point, maybe the 11 dive thing made a lot of sense, but the four minimum thing, we almost, when we put it in, we had to create a way to circumvent it because we allowed them to start doing dive only meets. And in reality, diving is declining so quickly. We didn't even have enough to fill the field last year in boys. So if maybe it is time to hand it to the schools, but say, look, get your guy educated, but y'all work on recruiting. But we're not ready to do that today. We just want to tell you that we told you we do the research. It leads into the pole vault requirement, which is very similar. In the boardroom, it was not this room because it's before this building was built, but when we added the girls pole vault, we had the president of the coaches association stand before the board and say, for 18 points, I'll put anybody up on a bent stick. And the board said, well, okay, let's just require them to have done it 4 times. Again, we've phased out all the other requirements for do 4 meets. We're one of the states, and we're not alone. We still struggle with the kid that has competed in junior and third party stuff all year and then walks on and displaces somebody to enter the region. But is that really a fight we need to fight, or is that a fight we let JD fight with his people at St. Henry and let him referee that instead of us having a policy on it? So
I think the one thing was it was 2018, I believe, where we took off all of the individual sports had to have a 4 meet minimum to enter the postseason. We've left that with the exception of pole vault and diving to the local school district, because like he said, if your coach is dealing with the kids' parents who they displaced. You know, my kids ran for you all year and that kid walked in, you're gonna put him in the region meet. I mean, that's your fight, you know? But I think what, again, we heard yesterday in our section meeting when we were asking this, a lot of states have gone to a minimum height.
yeah,
So at least, you know, cause like in our regard, to be quite honest with you, a kid could literally go to a meet and no height 4 times. And never clear a bar, but they've competed for the school 4 times. And still be entered in the region. So, most of the states in our section have gone to a minimum height, which would also require at least 1 participation opportunity for them to get over said height.
yeah, they've got to clear that height.
I want to clarify because we ran into this when we were talking about 2018. You know, one of the reasons why that changed back then is if, you know, we had that 4 meet requirement, all you had to do was report to the line in a cross country meet. So when you bring up a pole vault attempt, if am I on the runway? Is that?
I mean, yeah, you could take 3 X's or take 3 time violations, quite frankly.
You
And
basically grip it, start the runway and take a step and you've made a trial.
And
so
that's my.
From what I recall in 2018, that conversation was we had kids showing up on the cross country start line in crutches or boots or whatever, just to get that I started for my team so I can enter the region. Like, and that wasn't really what the intent of that 4 meet was for, but you know, schools were doing what they needed to do to get that kid that 4 meet or events or whatever.
Some of them did that so their region would have more kids.
In cross country, that's exactly why they did it.
Exactly why.
So, all right, so my question is, I know one time in the past, I'm assuming it's the same way, so like with someone said earlier about the pole vault, so they could get those points, just having, you know, someone in those areas. And with diving, like if for postseason play, a school that has diving is going to get more points, and they're going to versus a school that does not have diving. Is there any thought or consideration, because I think in both cases, the pole vault and the diving, there's a lot of schools from expense standpoint of the equipment and the things, and like you said, they're declining, that obviously we don't want to ever do anything to retract opportunities for kids to compete in postseason play or win state championships. But can it ever be looked at to even that playing field? Because basically the small number of schools that have those are going to win every regional championship over schools that don't have those abilities that you in pole vault or in diving, you compete and win, like it was swimming, individual regional championships, go on and can win a state championship, but that doesn't calculate into that team play, because it's almost like comparing apples and oranges.
But to be honest, those are both NFHS events in the NFHS rulebook. And so if we decided not to score those towards our championships, we would forfeit our right to be on those. And we have one on the track committee right now. And
Sure.
swimming, Darren's on swimming.
I got you.
So we would have to forfeit all of that in order to even consider it.
Well, and I think that part of Noel, to get part of your point though, I think one of the problems around swim participation, and we've heard this from a number of ADs and coaches, quite frankly, is the number one team, especially at the final meet, is everybody's competing for number two in both genders. That's just a fact of life. You're probably going for number two. So there's not as much incentive to develop new. So it's what we're trying to find out is, do we, in a time when there's not a lot of incentive, is our additional requirement even hurting it even more, hurting the participation? So that's really the impetus it came from. Impetus it came from. But we just want to share, we bring both those solutions, a lot of this stuff, that's why it's in 5. And then real quickly, 526 alternate tournament format. Just this week, we got additional information from Region 6, who is now on a much more timely basis going to consider are proposing a different way of doing their region in baseball and softball, which now addresses the gender concern we had a year ago when they only talked about it for baseball, and the timing concern was this would need to be decided before the seed deadline for plans. So I think you're going to get something. I think I know the AD at Fern Creek's kind of leading the communication piece, and I think there's consensus. So that's good. Region 1, we'll know when the brackets come in for soccer, how far, because they've gone back and forth. We shared at the annual meeting, they have a soccer experiment that they approved, and then they didn't approve, and then they didn't agree on what they approved. And we've just told them, y'all fight this out, let us know what you do. So when we get the brackets in, we'll know. But they've gotten permission to do it.
Yeah, I've had texts during this meeting.
Oh, yeah.
Where they're continuing to resolve it. I think
They still don't have
working
the issue that they didn't anticipate is that they were going to play a 5-team district tournament and a 3-team district tournament to seed the bracket positions in an 8-team regional. But they didn't call for how they're going to figure out who's 3rd, 4th, and 5th. So then when you threw that back at them, I could just tell us how the bracket's going to look. It was all of a sudden, in the case of the 15, 2 years ago, they had a bracket thing they understood. It's turned sideways. You might figure it out. We worked with them to put it in a traditional bracket format. Made sense. Everybody used it. They haven't yet got to that point down there. And district starts Monday. So we know they've got a deadline and they've got approval.
They've been shared the tools, including turning the bracket sideways,
Yeah.
as Mr. Crum shared. So I think they'll get there. It's just.
Yeah.
Do it.
Well, they shared it and they know that
Well, if they understand the component.
well, they know that it's got to be approved. Chad's got to bring it to me, and they haven't done that yet. And that's why they're working with Chad to get all that detail. Because it is I know that is an exception to the competition rules, so it's something that we've got to approve, and they've been kind of interesting. 531 gets to however long you want to discuss. But one of the options that the board has available to it is to amend a rule through referendum. You don't do that very often. Most of the time it's health and safety. But we had enough people, and I've had enough of you talk to me since the annual meeting. We had enough people that might favor a basic change if we can come to something that we all like, that maybe a referendum regarding transfer students could be executed this year, so you don't put it off another year because of waiting till next September to consider it. Now, I'm probably not the best guy to lead this discussion because I've been here a long time, and changing something like that just seems like heresy at some point. But we also know that any organization that fails to evolve becomes extinct. And at some point, we've got to recognize, like the discussion did at the annual meeting, we got more of our people in favor of some alteration than I ever thought. And I think a lot of us were surprised. Now, did they go out in the hallway and complain about it later? Probably. But when they were in there and put on the spot, they favored, and if I had to say a consensus, it was some type of tiering. Protect against what you really want to protect against, but involve some choice within the high school career. The concerns expressed afterwards may not have been representative of everybody, but I tell you, there's 24 of them talking about we need to look at what so-and-so state does because they at least block upper class. or they have, their penalty is that they can't play postseason. If I could say one thing about the transfers that incites people, and Darren, you and Chad, feel free to agree or disagree. Mid-season status changes just seem to bring a absolute red flag to the whole discussion. It almost like if you were to really look at this, is there something to pull together that would have a standard that before the first day of school is one thing, after the season's already started, maybe there's a different tiering. It just seemed like they kind of kept coming back to different ways of doing it. And if there's any interest in that, maybe we pull a group of schools together that we know have pretty good amount of transfers and represent 6 or 8 schools and district areas, and just see, how do you like this? Versus us decide, y'all decided in here.
I don't mind going ahead. This is one of those topics where you've got an opinion, you gotta say it. We've shared this before, and we know we have a really good board. The topic of a one-time transfer, as I've shared with the commissioner, and some of my constituents are in favor of it. I don't know where I am. I guess you can call me old school. I do remember we got a report on West Virginia, and they voted in a one-time transfer, and then I did their state legislature step in and said, oh, wait a minute, we gotta stop it.
And they basically changed it to where instead of a one-time, their transfer rule doesn't apply till the 10th grade.
Okay.
So they're giving them a 1, but it's only the 9th to 10th.
So I agree, when we sit and listen to all this, and Chad and Darren, and I've been on that side and trying to take care of eligibility and transfers. I think, again, we need to do something. I don't know what that is. I brought up the possibility about maybe we survey the member schools and give them 3 different options and see what kind of looks good to them. And then if they pick one, we have to have 2/3 if there's going to be. So if one kind of rose to the top, we could send that out and see if we got 2/3. But that's just an option coming from me. I agree with the commissioner. I think there's 2 overriding factors. We've been doing the same thing for a long time. We do need to look at it. Number 2, November 5th is going to decide a whole lot. So but we need to get ahead of it, or legislation's going to help us dictate that a little bit. But it's open for discussion, and we've got to have ideas. How do we handle transfers? And I think Randy in a discussion says, what are a majority of states doing with transfers in the country? Are there 25 that are following a certain pattern, or is it just all over the place? We need a lot of information and make an informed decision. But
And what we need is not a vote today, but what information do you need?
I was sitting there thinking, if 30 of the 50 states are doing this, then they must have thought it out. And, of course, we talked about, we don't want to be a follower necessarily. We kind of pride ourselves in being out front. But certainly if a large number of states are doing it a certain way that seems to be effective, they must be doing it that way for a reason.
Well, here's the challenge to that.
But there may not be.
To the data gathering, and that's fine. We can do it. We have, without question, probably have in the top 5 most restrictive transfer rule. Part of it is the penalty, because New Jersey celebrated the fact that they finally put in a transfer rule that has a 30-day period of ineligibility.
I thought that was aggressive.
That was aggressive for them. We've got other people who are Florida has given up. They just said basically where you go, but their legislature did it to them. We've got some states that still have a year period, but they have more exceptions, and they have regular hardship hearings. So, it is whatever we can gather. I think as the 2 sections that we communicate the most with, section 2 is our section. It involves Ohio. It involves West Virginia, Virginia, Delaware, Maryland, DC, and what am I leaving out? Pennsylvania. So that's our area. Section 3 is the SEC states. So it's Alabama, Georgia, Louisiana, North and South Carolina, although North Carolina's not an SEC state, but Florida and Georgia and Tennessee. So we have commonalities with all of them. They all have a transfer rule. Florida's just now is you don't have a penalty, but they have a transfer rule. Everybody does a different period. So is the interest, what's your period of ineligibility? Do we want to, how many are like Ohio, where if you leave because I got this from one of your ADs, you know, they probably copied you. But he suggested that mid-season transfers can play the rest of the season, no problem, but they can't play postseason. So they can't come in and impact the championship play. But do we need to know how many are doing that? Do we need to know how many follow up on transfers? How many of them? I tell you, the thing you heard at the annual meeting discussion was maybe there's a threshold. Not every year you have a one-time transfer, but once you do the one, now can the schools agree on the second? You remember we had a discussion 3 years ago where everybody said, let's give everybody one, but the second one, by God, it's hard clad. What if that second is the guy that moves from Florida to Kentucky? And he's already had a transfer in his record, or he moves from Paducah to Ashland to make it more realistic, a job transfer. And we all said, you know, you all said in here and said, well, we can't do that. Because that all of a sudden, half the people that from Pike County suddenly moved to work at the battery plant in E-Town, but they've already had a transfer. We're really, but see, it's all about what do we want to gather, and we really could go a bunch of directions, and we could give you what we think will work. But if it needs to involve what data points do you want?
I think to Mr. McCallum's point, you're not going to be able to have a chart and say 25 out of 50 do this because it's all over the board.
No, I mean, it'd be nice.
Yeah.
But you also could ask, based on your rule, how many rulings do you have to make?
Yeah.
And how many appeals do you?
Right.
Does that factor in at all to where maybe the most obscure rule is working to where it's not impacting as many as proportionally to our population, or it's impacting more?
Are there any states that have similar rules to what we have in place and who have maybe adjusted? And so then we could compare our data to what theirs looks like after they made adjustments.
Yeah, I think the biggest difference is the time period. Because a lot of states we will have, if you transfer, you're ineligible, you can gain eligibility, but during the period, here's how long you sit out. It might vary difference on how they do due process. You know, is it staff driven? Is it third party driven? So there'll be variances there, but we probably could come up with enough commonalities that we can at least get you how many do this. And it may need to be one of these spitball surveys. You ask 45 questions and try to figure out what 3 go together to help drive your thoughts. But I think we've got a little bit of clearance to talk about this more than we've had in years by virtue of the discussion that was held this year. And several of you were there. 9 of our board members were there.
When was that? What part of the meeting? Because I was not there, and I know I got there late because I was at a doctor's.
Very
appointment.
beginning.
First one.
Was it in a breakout workshop or something?
And we told them it was going to be.
Because we've had zero conversation locally about anything like this. I'm not convinced that there's a desire from the schools to change transfer rules. Are really not.
It may not be in 6 and 7, but I'll argue till the day is long that.
Which would lead me to think that this decision would need to be something decided by the membership.
Oh, yeah, it's not us. It's gotta be the membership.
And regardless of where we landed, that it would be something voted on by all the schools, right? Is that?
Absolutely.
That's what would happen.
Absolutely. But we can't get to the development because Jimmy, I think you're the one to ask, is it the schools or is it here? It's obviously got to be the schools, but you also are going to get into regional discussions where there's certain areas that already have so much mobility of students. They don't think there's any needed change.
It's just gonna be different in a urban setting.
Without question.
Versus a rural setting, and it'll be a free-for-all, for some parts of the state.
I think the thing that, I think Chad said something earlier, that when you look nationally at the movement towards school choice, and Kentucky now has already done that, we have the open borders. So I do think that there is this thing that, and I've evolved my thinking, I know, like you said, I mean, I used to be very much against it, and then the more I get into things, I start looking at it from the kid's perspective. And to me, unless there's a coach, I mean, there's something that's egregious that coach most of the time, and Darren can say, I mean, if they call us and, you know, we try to confer with the other school, if we realize there was no tampering or something, the kid, you know, there were circumstances, we try to be realistic. But the idea that, to me, eventually at some point, there could be the idea that someone might have merit in a lawsuit to say, well, so you're allowing me to choose school I go to, but I can't now participate in extracurricular activities that I want to participate in at this school that I'm allowed to go to attend. You know, so I think at some point that pendulum, like you said, we've got to at least look at something to try to.
And I think what you're seeing is a recognition among the other states that mobility is necessary, but can we put guardrails on it?
Right.
So for example, even in West Virginia, their opportunity to move is only that ninth grade, after ninth grade year. So is that a middle place? That's what they're finding, is that middle place where, or the period of, Ohio, I've never understood how the stood the test of time that you sit out the regular season, but not postseason, but it does, it works for them. So we could find out those kind of things, something that puts a guardrail in it versus having a third party group perhaps tell us everybody can move once and we just got to live with it. I think we have to realize that it may become necessary for us to decide which not so good tasting sandwich we've got to eat before it's shoved down our throat. And so if we realize that exactly as it is today is not an option, what will we come up with? That's the kind of question. Okay.
Some of those guardrails limiting the number that a school can accept in that year or per sport. Because I could also see starting 5, getting together and saying, we're going here.
Neighbors to the south put that in for foreign exchange kids years ago. They put limits that could come in at one point in time, so an entire team couldn't come in. Proportion to school size, perhaps, versus a fixed number, because obviously it's a higher percentage if 2 kids come to Pineville than if 2 kids come to St. X. So you got to kind of figure how you would do that, but that's those kind of guardrails. I mean, what is something that could prevent an entire team coming? Is it 3 basketball players? Because it's half the team. Is it 2? Is it 1?
And you always have the scenario where, maybe the 1 and 2 is problematic, but then number 3, it's dad got laid off at the factory in Ashland and has had to move to Lexington so he could work at Georgetown. And that's the one that takes him over that limit. I mean, you're never going to win that.
I think you've always got to have, you've got to have an ability to.
I think, for me, when we talk about the data that we think that a lot of people are more interested in, this is that coming from the AD world or is that coming from the coaches world? Because my concern is, I think something has to happen, but I think something like this instantly turns every coach into a recruiter overnight if you want to keep up.
Yeah.
So I just wonder, when you think about the football, basketball world where a lot of this really transpires, it's going to instantly turn our coaches into recruiters if you want to keep up. And I don't know, I'm just interested to know, do our coaches, because the AD, like a guy like Zub, he deals with a lot more transfers. So that world looks different to a basketball coach that's had 1 and 2 years. And he's like, why can't what's the deal there? Right. So it's different perspective, I think. So I think just keeping in mind that something has to happen, but I worry about the coaching pool and what that's going to do to our coaches.
I worry about the smaller schools becoming feeder programs.
Yes.
For larger schools, because you can play for a smaller school, maybe freshman, sophomore. But then when you get competitive enough that you can, for the junior, senior, you would use that transfer.
That's why if you had a one-time transfer, you have to put guardrails on it. You have to. Because they're just trying out.
I think it's got to start somewhere though, right? I think somewhere we got to start, look at something. Can we get some proposal?
And that's why it says possible. So hearing this doesn't resolve anything, but it does maybe give some direction to a couple of options. I'm not sure, and I've said this to Greg, I'm not sure. My luck has been, Darren can tell you from all the softball surveys, if you put out too many options, they come back exactly the same.
Yeah.
You don't really get it. So you've got to kind of whittle it down and decide who you want to involve. Is it, you get a working group of coaches, you get a working group of ADs. I know when we expanded what schools can do in the off season, the entire objective of the membership was to keep the AAU coaches out. But we've created a year-round workload for our coaches if they're going to keep up. And we knew that. We knew it was a coin flip. Which did you want? So it is a challenge.
Could we confer as a thought? I mean, because this board seems to be able to communicate really well together. And like you're talking about, our goal would be to create something to get on a ballot for next year. Is that what?
So this will be ideally the next couple, 3 meetings. We try to get, and let me re-answer my question because I gave you too quick an answer. See if we can come up with a consensus in here. Let us gather the data and put stuff together, get it to you all. And then the board could then decide, does it go out by referendum? which could possibly go into effect in 25, 26, or do we wait till the referendum is still everybody voting, every school involved? Or do we wait till the fall of 25, 26, and it can't go into effect 26, 27? Doesn't matter. That's a strategy thing. But I think, the thought in putting this out, and you notice it's the longest agenda item title, because we're not committing to anything. But it's just options to maybe develop a referendum or develop a proposal. If we don't start doing, we're never gonna get. And if you put something out, you remember this board sat here, two of you were in here. We sat here and proposed about 4 changes, Chad, Butch, that would have tightened down the transfer rule and tightened down the recruiting, and our schools voted it down. So that's not to say they're going to approve whatever we put out anyway. Hell, you can put out something, think it's well thought through, and they still reject it. We don't know.
But this would just be an action that we can work on developing something.
Absolutely. There's no action.
That's what we're doing.
This is, can we start the discussion following up that seminar? And we had 2/3 of the people that were signed in were there, and they were active participants, more than I ever thought they would be. Last time we did that segment, nobody said a word. But they came up with different things. We could take that, see what you think, and then when do we involve other people? I think you've got to get comfortable with what some of the drafting starts looking like before you start involving others.
Absolutely.
Because you may end up looking at this couple of meetings and nope, walk away.
Would we be allowed to, on the guardrail topics here, come up with, there's been 3 or 4 things suggested that all sounded interesting. I like the mid-season thing you said, things like that. Would we be able, if you did that either as a referendum or a vote, rather than trying to put all of them into one proposal, which some people are like, well, I don't like that part, so I'm against it. Could we say whenever we put that out, okay, here's one guardrail you can vote on, that this would be list proposals, second guardrail, and then that way, if some people just hate.
That's like Russ's question. The strategy of how you do it is the secondary discussion.
Sure.
It will become primary at the time. Because there's going to be some people that might vote no to the mid-season piece, but would vote yes to the freshman only.
Exactly.
Or what 2/3 of the states have that we've proposed in this room at least 5 times in the last 25 years. They could always go back home. And we have probably half the states that have that. You can always go back to where you started. You somebody allegedly does something, incites you to come, incentivizes you to come, you go, it doesn't work out. You play a couple of games, you come back. They allow them to come back, return to home district. We've had that here. So we got, there's several little bitty things you probably want to get separate thoughts on.
I like that.
So
I think there's a consensus, y'all.
at least keep moving.
Yeah.
Well, as long as it's at least keep moving, no commitments, nothing's proposed, nothing's drafted, anybody can get a copy of. We'll keep working and gathering data.
Sounds like information gathering.
I'd be
Yeah.
curious the initial implementation too, because if they did a transfer before 10th grade, well, what about those juniors and seniors?
Oh, yeah, you have to grandfather some
Right,
things. You're
right.
very true to me. Very true. Very
Do
true.
we have the data that shows at what point over the 4 years that most transfers happen? I would assume it would be between 9th and 10th grade. That's just my assumption.
We do not.
don't have it at our tips, but we have it if we mine it.
We do. We have the record, but we do, that's not a field we've captured electronically before. But you never know. There's internships all the time.
I'm
Yeah,
just curious, Denny, because I'm not sure about that between 9th and 10th grade, because at that point in time, they're all still gonna be the next LeBron James or Tom Brady. I would, and I say that in jest, but I'm being serious. It's after that 10th grade year and that 11th.
I almost think 10th, I think
And
so.
that reality starts to set in that they're not gonna be this at this school and it's all the coach's fault and now.
And as you know, the flame ups generally happen, those people at 11 to 12.
Yes.
The big number is probably 10 to 11, but the 11 to 12 is what gets everybody talking.
Oh, yeah.
Or the 12th to 13th.
That's for you in the courtroom. 532.
Or can I retain my second grader?
532, just to remind you, this is the scheduled year for surveying on the shot clock. 28 states now. And we finally have our coaches association. We're concerned about their thoughts. Several of their members are a little more vocal in support. But the plans would be to look at that survey and the triennial survey right after the November meeting, so that we don't complicate the already 12-week death march of fall with a big survey item and let us get started. So after November, we would try to do those 2 surveys if anybody's interested in timing. What we will need to finalize at the November meeting, especially on the shot clock survey, is who it goes to.
Yeah.
Because for the first time, you might get a pretty good difference if you surveyed the coaches versus if you surveyed the ADs.
I would almost suggest you make sure that you get every head coach, so we could actually, I'd love just to see from a head coach perspective, not ADs, not other people, designated refs, whatever. What do they think?
Well, you ready? No. Okay. The history in here has been bylaw 1 says 1 vote per school designated rep. The coach's opinion is not prioritized. That does not mean you can't change that. That doesn't mean you can't ask the coach association to do a survey. That doesn't mean you can't get that data, but you all have been pretty consistent ever since the mid-2000s debacle over the change in the football playoffs. When the superintendents, ADs, principals, and coaches apparently never talked to each other in the same building, and you got inconsistent answers. So you are going to have, that's why I say in November, I want y'all to tell us who you want to survey. Damon's a former coach that's now an AD. I'll probably talk to Kate and what you're looking.
I'd also like to see what the ADs think too. It'd be great to see like
what you're saying.
The ADs, the boys basketball, girls basketball, so that we can look at it.
It's not to be argumentative. The problem is the basketball coach generally doesn't have to get the clock operator.
That's right.
And the additional clock operator and pay for the clock.
That's right.
And that's why the boards kind of always said, their opinion is nice. It's really nice if they all agree. And the best thing is if Russ Thompson and JD Strange call all their coaches together and say, okay, what do y'all think? And everybody agrees and sings kumbaya. That doesn't always happen.
Your boys and girls coaches want to
I think it's happening more than ever since we got rid of everybody having an input. I think it's happening more than ever.
Oh, because they want to represent. And your younger ADs especially are scared to be out on a limb.
So now, also in consideration of superintendents, because a lot of times, and no knock on athletics, but they may want, some at the AD may do what's best for them instead of what's best for
correct.
Yeah, everyone. So I think that.
Well, let us talk internally about a way to maybe gather those other opinions, but we know the binding opinion probably needs to be the designated rep. And then we see differences, we see it. That would be for the triennial survey update. Yes, pickleball will be on the survey. Yes, stunt will be on the survey. What's the third one? There's 3. Flag football. With all those people that now added it for girls. And I'll be working to try to work with Ms. Jackson on how that's done every 3 years. Make sure that Miss Emerging Sports puts anything else on there. There's several we won't ask that we usually ask, but nobody ever wants to do them anyway. So we're not anywhere close.
When is the next survey here?
This is it.
I thought we did it last year.
Nope. You implemented last year and this year the survey from 2021. Time flies when you're having fun, brother. Doesn't that kind of scare you?
I must have it confused with something else.
Yeah, tail end of 2021 and into 21, fall 21, 22.
What's the survey that Rob can do on a
That's your Title IX survey.
but it's not but that's different. Isn't there a lot of overlap on that?
No, because this is, do you want us to sponsor a championship? That is, or does your school want to offer the sport?
Gotcha.
And your answer's on all this.
Physical,
I just want
required physical.
I just want you to get better at taking cell phone pictures. Reminder to each of you, in particular the new ones, I'll reach out to the new ones. We are advancing our dates earlier on the basketball tournament. And just so you know, part of that is we will go out, we're supposed to go out with the ticket order renewals mid-October. And the price will be the same. I told you this summer, price will be the same until the renewal deadline, the second week of December. And they're going up after that. So we did hold off for the 3rd straight year a price increase, despite the fact that we know the wage of every person in that building we're paying has gone up. So we're going to try to incentivize people to renew, but there's a deadline. And after that deadline, they start going up. So especially the newer ones, I'll probably call them each one of 18 of you individually and make sure, because the other thing that changed, as Mr. Cope and I have been working on, is the seating area that you all are in is totally different. They've replaced all the seats. It's not the same numbers. So people are gonna be moving around and I've got to talk with you all about groups you want to be paired with and all sort of stuff. A little bit earlier than normal. 535 is just, we put it on the agenda. Matt and Greg and all of us that were in on the planning meeting know that the issue of golf carts for coaches has been a discussion point. We have coaches that have emailed everybody, I think, that has a valid email address about in the world, not just in here, about the coaches' carts. We also know nationally it is an issue everywhere because so many people have carts, don't have enough carts available. And when they start restricting them at the big tournaments, because smaller tournaments have let them do it, it becomes a bigger issue. So we got it. Matt and I talked about this today at the regional meeting. I've talked with Joe and Butch, and Butch used to run golf a lot, and Joe does a great job running it now. There's several points we want to ask people, but I think the idea is that we put it back in the hands of the people that are wanting change. Say, okay, how would you propose it happen? Not just demanding us to do it and maybe absorb that cost, but how would you propose it that works? And then we can visit with the golf house again, see if it's workable. Joe, you've been to that meeting at the national meeting 4 years now, 5 years now, and it's the same discussion every year. But you did it for more than 10 years. I've been to it enough times to know it's always a discussion. And the thing that sometimes they don't factor in is first week of October. Courses are in sometimes different shape than they were in July when they were zipping around. And what are we going to do if they do all this work and they pay for all these carts and suddenly the course comes up and says, you know what, we've had rain all week. We're going to let you play, but we're not even doing 90 degrees. You got to stay on the path. What kind of heck are they going to raise them? So we want to try to just put down a few things. I'll ask Joe to double check it and see, but we want to just respond back and say, look, if y'all want this, then come up with a plan. And who's going to pay for it? Because we're kind of sure who's not. So who's going to pay for it? And talk to the one thing that I'm concerned about. We just went to this 3-round first round 3 or 4 years ago. Seems to be going extremely well. But do we start cutting out some of the courses that have been able to hold it because they don't have enough carts to do this? I mean, Kenton Lakes probably has 9,000. I saw them all up there on the scramble one day. But I can tell you one thing, our state course is pretty limited in terms of its inventory. They've said they would probably have to rent. And so who's going to pay for that? So those kind of things we want to look at.
And then how are they going to charge them?
Yeah. Yeah, because if they choose electric, then all of a sudden they have to rent 40 electric carts. But this place isn't set up with charging stations for 40. How are we going to handle this on a multiple day? They just need to answer more questions than just we demand a cart. And how would you make it work? Putting yourself out there as some golf experts, tell them. They'll say you make it work. Anything else, Joe? I mean, we just want to keep gathering this. What we didn't want to do, what Matt expressed to me the day we were at Scotty, we just don't want to let it sit. Don't ignore them. But tell them if you want to change something, propose an answer.
It is really tough as a golf coach to show up to that, and you got 5 kids strung out over 4 holes, and every tournament all year you've had a cart available to you. Well, almost every tournament you
those tournaments,
and I have that change of pace. I don't know how many of just the head coach have one. I would think courses would have that.
Yeah.
You know, so I don't know. It's just as a former golf coach, and you go to that when you show up to Bowling Green Country Club, it's you just don't have the chance to see your kids. And you get to that point, it's frustrating.
And you drill the line. You have to. This is what we want to drill down to. Are you talking about one head coach and only people that have 5? Or is it one head coach for the individual that has 3?
Yeah.
They've really got to drill down. What's their answer? They can't, it's not going to be an automatic.
And the email that went around that some of you might have got was for only the team qualifiers.
Yeah.
So
if I have
you
one,
could
I
probably
can walk
do
with
that.
one, right? I can keep up with him or her all day. And
Yes, but you've also got people with 3.
Yeah.
You could probably do that.
That's the difference. That's the
You're gonna have
difference.
less ADA carts. But then what about the coach with 2 kids, one on the front, one on the back?
Yep.
They're not gonna be happy either.
Sure. Yeah.
They're going to have to come up with this, right? That's what we said.
Yeah, that's what we want to present those issues. You all solve it.
Yeah, fine.
If they come with a bunch of people that agree and they all say it's only teams and it's only one, you can probably find 15, 20 extra carts and still leave yourself. What we can't do is give away so many carts to coaches. We can't meet an ADA accommodation, all of us get sued. So we got to try to figure We've gone, this year Joe was proactive and gone to where we're getting the registrations now, even for the ADA cart, so we can just see how much this is happening. You know, so. All right. 536, track and field alignment, just to remind you that we set a 4-year alignment for track and field, so it's at least 2 more years before you would have an effective change, but we'll have 4 full years of data. So likely in the 25-26 school year, we look at the enrollment numbers that have been submitted and start looking at that proportion. It's generally been about 40% of our schools are in 1A because they have smaller teams, and 30% of 2A and 30% of 3A, but that's not for a year, but we just want to keep it. As people start talking about the quote new football alignment, you're going to get the question about track. Just want to be sure you know. And basketball alignment discussion, we have had a group that's been meeting in the 6th and 7th that I think at least as of September 26th has surprisingly not reached any consensus on what they want to do, but we know without question there has to be some. We've had 5 or 6 schools that are in physical different locations than they used to be. So we know we got to make some adjustments. You all do that at the January meeting. We'll continue working with that group, see if they bring something forward, but otherwise you'll see something in November that we can call a draft, get back out for feedback. Trying to be sensitive where we can to the fact that we don't want to create a district with 1 or 2 teams in a bunch of other sports. But at some point, your only criteria has been geography. And the first time you add another criteria, you're going to have issues. We still don't have a definitive answer on the new school in the 8th region for future team sports. We'll know more about that by the time we meet in November, if they're really going to have a competitive basketball team. And that may or may not be other things involved. Then when we get to 6-1, all of this, unless you tell us differently as a group, unless you tell Greg and Mr. Willard and Mr. Howard, all of these move forward to the meeting for a final vote. We have to approve, technically the board has to approve the 2 things that pass the annual meeting for us to put them in process. The second item on finance and business, you got the financial reports. We'd ask you to have a motion to approve those. And third item is the bass fishing state site. And the recommendation will be that we go to Lake Cumberland in 25 and 27, and we go to Kentucky Dam Village for 26 and 28. So it's my role to recommend to you all, it's your role. Is that what you want to do?
What, I was confused when they were talking. I thought Kentucky Dam, and she didn't clarify it. I thought Kentucky Dam wanted it in 25 because she has major bass tournament, and Cumberland wanted it in 26 because she was hosting major bass tournament.
He said that the first time.
That was confusing. Yeah,
He said that the first time, and that's why I went back.
I know.
Yeah. And she talked about opposite, and they both agreed.
Yeah, they reversed
because it would level the budgets.
Gotcha.
Because they didn't have to have big and none. Because the first time she said it was backwards of what they had,
Yes.
quite frankly, said before the meeting.
Okay.
She clarified it.
Yeah, it's really, they're the levelizing of their budget. They're going to put $100,000 into events this year, and they don't want to. They know they wanted some fudge factor, so basically it would still be 2 and 2.
That would get us opposite of the big events, each one of them have.
And they would also know for the 27 and 28 springs when they're going to have it for other big events. So
We talked about, well, they were talking about costs. That's 2,500, 3,000. That's on them, correct? That's not a cost that falls back on us.
no, that is them. They have already solicited sponsors that would work with us. And we've got to decide, because this is now a venue sponsorship, it really doesn't impact TPG. But we've got to decide what we do with getting them in front of other people, which is what they committed to, like the Calvert City, and those are off they now made that as part of their venue. The issue that we've gotten oral commitments from, and you've got somewhat in writing from the last meeting, is the cost of the FLW people to stay, and they've covered the hotel rooms, and they agreed in her presentation. She talked about the $3,000 or $4,000 additional dollars is going to cost. That's not included. They've committed to that.
So they're committing to go to Cumberland to continue to do what they do at Kentucky Dam.
Correct.
They're going to bring that to Cumberland.
They have already committed that. And they do run several other events at Cumberland.
Okay.
The MLF runs an event right before ours. The issue that they brought up, it was good to hear the public feedback, because it's exactly the opposite of what we heard 12 years ago, that the venue for the region made a difference. So we all, as you all make this decision, if you do, we need to be, I think office, I can tell you, will be tone deaf to people arguing about, well, saying it's an advantage for the region and state. No, that's not what your rep said.
I like that, as you said though, about you could actually use portions of
They
the,
do that now in Western Kentucky. For those that don't know, they've got some cordoned off areas, latitude and longitude boat reefs they can't be in for the regional tournament. Be quite honest with you, what they said today, they may not need to do that anymore. But that's an MLF thing. They're trying to make sure it's fair. The other thing about right now, and I don't know what it's gonna be like in Cumberland, we will have a couple, 3 other tournaments about the same time down there that might be a one in the afternoon using the other ramp, and we're using this one. And so I think to a certain extent, it is probably just matured where those restrictions aren't as necessary.
Well, the region down there had been using Lake Barkley as the regional competition, and that stayed off of Kentucky. But I looked at that and the argument about the advantage, only 4 of the top 30 finishers last year were from Western Kentucky.
Right.
If
Well,
you don't count Barron County.
See, that's why,
You don't count them in Western.
that's why we've got a chart. We've got a chart that's on our website that shows, and Darren really, I'm not gonna say we got defensive, but when everything is about, the only thing that matters is the winner. When you break it down to first through fourth, it's been spread out pretty good. You know, it's gotten better over the course of time. I mean, did y'all win one year? Or second?
we were top 10.
And then Lawrence County won.
Lawrence County's been,
So-
top. Yeah, we've had,
Stuff happens but if winning is the only thing we're after, we're all kind of failures because it's a top spot. I think that runner-up's pretty happy most of it. But that will be the recommendation unless I hear different from you all. Here's what will now be about a 10-minute break, and I know Marty has to.
I would like to revisit 5.3.7. We skipped over that. It's in my area.
Gotcha.
I've already had, we've had a couple of schools have reached out to me, this one formally now, about pulling out of district play. We had that discussion. They've now reached out to the commissioner. Their opponents have reached out to me about, what about these contract fees? So that's
Well, that's their choice.
Yeah.
They can buy them out or they can let them walk away. And 95% of the time when they pull out of district, they let them walk away because they're able to find a game. If they can't find a game, it's a different story. But most of the time, as happened with a couple of years ago with one of yours, Bellevue or somebody, when the numbers went down, we asked, what would you do if it was you? And they all said, okay, we're walking away, conned us into it, but they've got total choice on that. Unless you're playing, and what was the school in Ohio?
Bishop or
Bishop Sycamore.
That's right.
I said that because I was wanting to look at it all, you know.
oh, yes.
Out there was too much contract reimbursement from that one. I don't think coach ever got over that either.
Can I ask
steam long enough.
quick question?
And I know that Marty needs to leave. He's got a commitment that he cannot miss.
He's gotta be gone by 1.
Would be nice.
Can I ask a quick question? When will first round sites I've met with a couple swim people, so I promise them I'd mention it. First round sites of swim locations be determined.
November. We'll
Okay.
bring you the sites based on her research. We've got a couple of facility inspections to do, and that'll be done in November and be ready to roll.
Any motion to come out of session?
Oh, I think you adjourn it and he convenes the board back in session.
All right, we're gonna adjourn and come back at 12:15. I'll be in charge.